Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined as always by Dakota Lasky. Dak, it's time to pay the rent, buddy. How you doing?
You know, I'm doing better than I expected after this weekend. I'm doing all right. Been busy with work a little bit, but you know, hanging in there. And yeah, we're in March, which is absolutely wild to me. I also know that by the way, so I know we were talking about this earlier today or the day before. February was our best month for listens and downloads so far for the show. So thanks everyone for tuning in. I think that's really cool. I know you like looking at numbers. I check the stats for the show like literally every day. I like to see everyone check it in. So that was cool. I'm looking forward to March, and thanks everyone for listening. But yeah, this episode, wow. Had to really mentally prepare myself, physically prepare myself for this. Meditated a lot and had to play through Other M for the first time in, I don't know, probably
10 years.
Yeah, I mean, close to a decade.
Yeah.
I feel like it probably hasn't been. I mean, it's 2021 now in this game. Yeah, it's come out over a decade now, actually. So, yeah, I'd probably say it's about that. It certainly wasn't a game I was playing a lot after it came out. So, yeah, it's been a very long time since I played it, but I did. And in fact, I'm going to play it again. I'm going to try to. I'm not making any promises, but I'm going to try to play it again on hard mode for our next episode. But yeah, I actually played Other M in 2021, a sentence I did not think I would say.
You know what's funny is, I have a save file from literally 10 years ago of Other M in hard mode, and I got about 15 minutes in, and I stopped. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to echo what you said. Thank you to everyone that is tuning in and downloading the show and recommending the show. We love and appreciate all the love that you guys are giving us. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's here. It's time. We've been building this episode up for a long time. We're going to do a two-parter here. This week we are focusing on the story of Metroid Other M. And you know what? I guess I just wanted to put this out there as kind of a disclaimer, if you will. I know that so many people in the Metroid community for so long were so negative about this game, and frankly, probably justifiably so. But I know that we're trying to move past that here. We're going to dissect the story. We're going to beat it up. There's no way to beat around that bush. We're going to beat it up, but I don't think we're going to continue to beat it after it's already dead. When it's just a corpse and you're still beating the heck out of it. We're not going to do that. We're going to be critical, but we're going to try and keep it moving along and have some fun with this as well, because some of this is just so insane that it's actually pretty funny, as you were kind of saying.
Yeah, as you all know, I've been dreading playing this game and these episodes for quite a while now. And I think that was misplaced, because when I went back and I played this game, I'll be honest, actually playing the game was still pretty dreadful, as I remember it. But the story, the cutscenes, all of that, oh my god, since I've played Other M, I've become a big fan of bad movies and bad TV shows, which wasn't something that I was super into 10 years ago. Now it's a big fan of mine. If any Red Letter Media fans out there, best of the worst, I love that. I love that stuff. Ooh, caught myself there. I love that stuff.
Shout out to Psycho Gorman. Sick movie. Anybody that hasn't seen that, you gotta check that out.
So, obviously, The Room is the most mainstream bad movie example, but there's so many worse, Get Even, one of my favorite bad movies. Anyway, so that's what I equated this to, was this game, the story, the actual plot, what happens in the game aside from the gameplay is so bad it's hilariously funny. And I used to think that it was so bad that there was no enjoyment you can get from it, but I think now that I'm an adult, I'm in my mid-late 20s, there's a lot less on the line for me in terms of being a Metroid fan. When the game came out originally, and I was hot off the heels of Prime 3, not hot off the heels, this game came out 3 years after, but still looking forward to the next Metroid game, younger. This game not being great, not living up to my expectations, meant a lot more. Nowadays, not as big of a deal. Now I can look back at it as just a big funny joke and laugh at it, which I did a lot. I laughed a lot at this game and very much at it, not with it, very much at the game. And that brought the enjoyment up for me, and it really, not really, it somewhat made up for the fact that I still think the gameplay is pretty garbage, but I got to laugh at how hilariously bad the story is and how bad the writing is. Like, it is atrocious. And I know that there's like a retranslation or something out there that exists of like improves the writing of the game or the story or something, which I haven't checked out. I'd like to check it out, but as it is, like vanilla Other M is so painfully bad, it does actually cycle back to being funny. And so that kind of, made up for it a little bit and made this replay through a little more enjoyable than I expected.
It's funny to hear you say that, actually, because I don't know if I would say like I think that the story is really bad. I think that most of what we see in cutscenes is really bad, but it wasn't for me. Like there's a certain type of movie, like you mentioned The Room and stuff like that, and that movie is like so bad that it's good. And I don't know if this one was just kind of, it didn't get to that level for me where like it was like so ludicrously bad that it was like entertaining. Because like I think that the bare skeleton of this story actually makes sense and is pretty cool if you were to look at it. But it's just like,
okay.
well, let me finish.
Okay.
But I think that the way that they executed it is really what derails it. And obviously, when I talk about the bare skeleton, like there are certain choices that are made, which we'll get into and talk about, that I like just think were really awful. But I mean, on the whole of it, it's not like the worst plot in the world. So like the fact that it didn't get to that level of like so bad it's good to me, it just kind of got to like so bad that it's meh, which I feel like is almost worse,
Well, like, the problem is that, like, the good, I guess, bare bones structure of the story, which is debatable, is really just ripped from Fusion. So it's like you can't even really credit it to this game because, like, the functional, like, structure of the story is essentially just a retelling of a game that has already been out, So the things that
you're not wrong right there. I agree with you.
Very good, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dak, let's just get right into the story here. We're going to talk about the story. The story beats kind of as they happen. We'll summarize here and there, and we'll take you through the story right to the very end, and we'll have some fun here. But you know what? I do want to give credit where credit is due, because I think that the cutscenes themselves, like the animation, looks actually pretty cool. And the opening scene where they recreate the ending of Super Metroid is actually pretty cool. Mother Brain looks cool, and you get the big fight feel with the baby Metroid, who is now the Super Metroid. I like what they did there. I think that the animations themselves look pretty good.
Yeah, certainly one of the things about Other M you can't knock it for are the cutscene graphics. I mean, they're really well done. They kind of remind me like the quality of like the Smash like CGI trailers, Like they're not like Blur Studio level, but like they look really solid, and honestly, they've aged pretty well too. Like going back to those cutscenes, they look really good. I think like in some frames, like Mother Brain looks kind of and then like in some of the other scenes later, like there's not too much going on. Like it's a lot of like flat surfaces, and the in-game areas, like it's not textured very well. But like the cutscenes overall, I think aged pretty well, look pretty good. They certainly look really good for the console. I mean, for the Wii, they have to be some of the best cutscenes for like the game's library. Like very much up there. And it's a shame that the content itself is not very good. I mean, even in that first scene, like it looks really awesome, and then like just Samus's narration just immediately kills it. I'm like, oh Jesus! And it's not even like a super, well, no pun intended, but it's not like a very accurate, reenactment of what happens in Super. But I guess that's fair because it's technically like a dream of Samus's in the story, so I guess it doesn't have to be. That's not a big deal. It does look really cool, but yeah, the cutscenes in this game look absolutely amazing. So that's one of the best parts about this game for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned the opening like narration from Samus, and I feel like right away, if you're playing this for the first time, you can kind of pick up some red flags here. I hate to. This isn't a fault of the voice actress, Jessica Martin. I don't think I don't think it was her fault, but I feel like she was, I don't want to say miscast, but the direction that she was given for Samus in how to make Samus sound just sounds like extremely robotic and cold, and it's just like very slow and deliberate, and it doesn't work for me at all. Like there's no fire, I feel like, in almost any of her lines. And you know what, I'm not going to sit here and say like anybody did a bad job, except for maybe the director who is directing Jessica Martin on how to do this. But I mean, unfortunately, she just doesn't come across very well as Samus, and she has like, God, she just has these bonkers words and lines and stuff like that. Like she keeps on calling Mother Brain Mother, just Mother. She calls the baby Metroid the baby, which I think is weird. It's just like she doesn't sound like she's saying something that any person would really ever actually say, and it just like sounds like strange, but in really a bad way. And unfortunately, that doesn't really waver throughout most of the game. It starts here and as a continual theme. I really think for Samus, less is more. Like, she did not need to monologue or narrate as much as she did in this game. Less is more. This is just another example that I didn't even like that in Fusion. But I thought that it was a little bit more tolerable in Fusion, maybe because, there's no actual voice actress behind it. But yeah, this is raising some red flags right away.
Well, that's one thing, and I'm a huge Fusion fan. My favorite 2D Metroid. But if all the lines that Samus speaks in Fusion, if those were all like, given like they were in Other M, right? They would sound just as bad. They really would. And thankfully, Fusion has less of those monologues, and I think a lot of it's the writing too. I can't blame the voice actress at all because she was obviously directed. Like no voice actress, no one in their right mind would listen to any of this and think that it's a good like rendition of how Samus should speak, right? Like that's very obviously she was directed that way. And I mean, if it's not obvious, that's what it seems like to me. Like I don't think that anyone would intentionally try to deliver the lines like that. But at the same time, I felt like if you delivered those Fusion lines the same way, it would feel just as bad. But a lot of the writing too is the narration makes it like the narration's redundant. Like so much of her narration is just explaining what we can see. Like when she in the beginning of the game, she gets the SOS and she explains the baby's cry. Like that's the obvious example there where we know why it's called that. It's very obviously a shrill SOS, and that doesn't even need to be explained. Or later in the game when she's talking to MB and she like says, "Oh, I have such and such reaction, and then I said this," and then she speaks. Like it's stuff that doesn't need to be said because we can see it with our own eyes. Samus is constantly doing that. She's constantly explaining the most simple stuff. And I don't understand why they had her write like that or had her written like that. It's like for someone who should be a very like perceptive person and I don't know, mindful, like she's coming to the most basic conclusions and like explaining things in the most simplest of terms that are very obvious. And it doesn't help that everything is delivered in the same monotone fashion, which I have to believe is directed. So yeah, that's one of the things that makes this game so hard to recommend to people, because like her narration, if that was just removed completely, would make the game like at least 50 times better. So much of what she says doesn't need to be said.
And I think you just touched on it too, but like it's really awkward because it's almost like a live script reading, because there's a scene in the game where like someone is saying something and then Samus like immediately says after like Anthony said, and I was and it's just like reading like the descriptions on a script while like the other characters are reading the lines, and it sounds
like DVS.
Like super weird. Yeah, it's just like it's weird and it doesn't flow, and it like the problem is Samus says things in this game that like no living person would ever say. Like nobody sounds like that, and there's a few scenes where her dialogue is like, she sounds like a normal person, but then unfortunately those scenes are just like really bad. So yeah, it's too bad that our first exposure to the voice of Samus ended up this way. I really hope that if they do voice acting for Prime 4, they kind of ditch this presentation. I have to believe that they probably aren't going to do voice acting, at least for Samus in Prime 4. But yeah, it didn't work at all. The amount of like baby and mother references in this game is like just it's too on the nose. Like I get that they're building up the attachment between the baby Metroid and Samus, but like it really is too
On the
much.
nose,
I
you
feel
don't
like.
say. The game opens with the image of like a fetus being being
Yeah,
born in space. Like, oh, I wonder what the theme of this story is. Ah,
yeah,
no, it's great. And there's other times where Sam's just like explaining how she feels, like almost exactly. It's like when you read someone's script in their first draft and they haven't like exactly figured out how to like write subtext or like make someone be subtle, or they're afraid that the audience won't get it, right? So they have to like say it out loud to make sure that it comes across. Like there's one scene not too long after this where there's like a briefing and Adam like gives them all their orders and they all do that stupid thumbs up thing. Oh my god, this story thinks it's so cool with the thumbs up thing, but we'll get to that later. And they do that, and immediately after that, Samus starts talking, like she has a reaction to what Adam says, and then she starts talking about that reaction that she just had. That like this is such a waste of time. Even in that first scene where that narration, like her first line is "Why am I alive?" Like, is that a line Samus would say? Like, do you think in the middle of battle in Prime, Samus like gets knocked out and like she wakes up just like not trying to like get away at all? You know, like why am I alive? Like not even like there's no effort. Like she's such. It's like a completely different character to me. It's insane. It's like from the very first line you get that kind of wow. This is not the same character that I've been playing Metroid games with for the past 20, 25 years or however long it was at the time.
yeah. I don't really disagree with anything that you said. Let's keep the plot moving here. So Samus answers a distress beacon on the bottle ship. She gets there and she meets Adam Malkovich. And man, so I guess first of all, Adam comes with a team, and like every single member of this team, except for Anthony, have no personality, no character. They have like the most
Whoa,
basic.
whoa,
Like this
whoa.
guy's the engineer. This guy's the whoever.
My
This
man,
guy's the
my man Maurice. Don't slander my man Maurice. He has a couple quips.
I can't remember Maurice at all, except and I played this game last week. So like the these guys are just there and they're there to die, and that's fine. But then like I feel like we should get to know them a little bit so that their deaths mean something, or we should at least play up the mystery of their death a little bit more. I'm jumping ahead of myself, but yeah, I didn't like really any of the supporting characters there. Even Anthony, who's like actually one of the bright spots of this game. He calls Samus princess for some reason, and Samus is like monologuing, trying to spin it as like some kind of sign of respect, and I just like didn't buy it at all. But the worst offender here to me is Adam. He is just, and unfortunately, the relationship between him and Samus is a big part of this game. But like to me, like there's nothing redeemable or nothing likable about Adam. I don't, and I'm sure that you probably agree with this too. But like, one of the big flaws of Metroid Other M is like how Samus is literally immediately subservient to Adam and all of his protocols and everything that he is demanding of her. I mean, Samus has saved the galaxy multiple times over at this point, like multiple times. She answered the distress signal on her own accord. She's not there as part of his squad. If anything, she should be saying like, "You guys follow my lead." And so it drives me nuts that she just like so quickly falls in line with Adam. And maybe this wasn't the intention, but maybe I don't know. It feels like it to me, where it's like she just like it just feels lazy and cheap, because it's like the game almost tries to tell you like, okay, Samus has daddy issues, so that she's going to fall in line with whatever Adam says because she wants to like earn his approval, and it immediately sets Samus back to me instead of like presenting her as this badass space warrior that we all know. And the flashback, like the flashback was awkward too, where you go to like young Samus and she gives that whole spiel about how she gives like the thumbs down and how that's also supposed to be a sign of respect. And I was like, what? Like I don't know. I still don't understand what that's supposed to be about. I don't know. Like I get what they're going for. They're setting up Adam as this guy who places duty above all else. He has the flashback where he sacrifices his brother. But and Samus's reaction
scene
to that too is just makes her look really bad. Like it's hard to believe that the Samus who's freaking out about that is the same Samus who obliterated every Metroid on SR388. Yeah, Adam, unfortunately to me, is like the low spot of this game with his character and the relationship between him and Samus in particular. It just, I feel like it makes Samus look so dependent, so subservient, and sometimes it's weird because it's like she's straddling the line between like seeing him as a father figure and like a love interest almost, and it just
Oh, really?
ugh.
I didn't really ever.
Did you ever get those vibes? Because I kind of
No.
did, and I was like, well, that's weird.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here because you went through a lot of stuff. I never got the love interest feeling. I think Adam's character is really funny because so Adam shows up and Adam is like what, like a 35, 40 year, like he's a grown man. And like a grown man, and he sees Samus is acting like a complete child, like cold shouldering her as she shows up. Samus probably, I don't know, within like 3 or 4 minutes they fight that big like eye monster that like forms from the purple bugs, and Samus of course saves everybody because she's like a billion times stronger than all of them individually or as a group. And immediately Adam is like, oh, actually, Samus, we could totally use your help. Like, oh, it was the comedic timing of that unintentionally was so good. And because he like immediately has to eat that. I thought that was funny. I actually didn't hate the whole like father-daughter Samus Adam thing or Adam Samus thing going on. I think fundamentally it's not a bad thing. Like Samus looking to Adam as a father figure because she doesn't have any parents because she was orphaned by a whole like big giant space dragon and space bugs attacking her colony. I think that makes sense. For her character, I think that makes sense. Even if she's someone who's like, a cold, like, badass warrior, I still think that makes sense for any person to want that kind of figure in their life if they don't have it. And to see Adam as that person, that makes sense. I thought, yeah, the whole thumbs up and down thing was very silly. But you're right. Like Samus is, I think it's more like Samus is, I think it's okay to look as Adam as a CO in that like, moment, right, in this scenario and be like, okay, I'm going to work under Adam's order because, because she makes a good point. There's one line she has when they come across a body in one of the rooms and they're all standing around it and Samus is monologuing to herself for already like the 20th time. And she's like, I got to cooperate with all, I don't really like this situation, but I kind of have to cooperate with these people because it's probably my best chance to make this work. And she's right. And that there's a couple lines in this game where Samus is actually, on point. And she's right with that line. So to work with them, like, makes a lot of sense for her character. And she already sees Adam as kind of a father figure, so why not take orders from him? But like how she does it, the execution of it, yeah, it's like she has like the weakest and lamest line. She's like doesn't even say like yes sir like a cool way. She's like of course of course like totally or whatever, and like it has like does this weird pose like no objections of course I think was the line. It's like it's not cool. And then she explains exactly how she feels about Adam. I think the conflict and like having this like drama is fine. I think it would have been cool if Samus is like immediately objecting Adam, but like, obviously conflicting with it internally, and that would be cool. But instead how they execute it is really lame, because I don't think necessarily taking orders in this context is like a weak thing to do. It makes sense, but how she does it just comes off as a super lame-o and not hype at all. That's also the same scene, I think, by the way, or around that time where Adam instructs the Samus to go to the systems management room to turn the electricity on as they're standing in a brightly lit room, which I also thought was really funny.
Gotta love it.
And he's like talking to them on a monitor in the same room, but like between glass, but he's like looking through the monitor at them and he's like, got to turn the power back on. I'm like, sir, what do you think you're working? I mean, I guess they have some really strong generators. I don't know. But and then they do this is the end of the briefing. Remember that? And they all do the thumbs up and Samus like has to like hem and haw about it and be like, and I guess I got to really work with these people. Like, do I do the thumbs up? And then she's like, that's when she goes into like the no objections, of course, and does a pose. And like, oh my god, this game is so lame. But yeah, I think overall, Adam and Samus's character. I think Adam, yeah, kind of real. It's towards the end of the game. I think I have the most problem with Adam's character. At the beginning, it's not that bad. I think her explanation, the flashback with all that, is not horrible. It is like cheesy, the stupid thumbs down scene, but like, I don't think it's that bad. It made me laugh, and I think if it had been executed a little better, it would have been fine.
See, that's kind of what I mean when I say like the skeletons of the game are okay, because I don't disagree. Like, I think that the father figure relationship between Adam and Samus isn't the worst idea to explore. It's just that, you know, all the layers on top of it don't make it work. Like, I hate the young Samus flashbacks, like especially when she's like given the thumbs down. Like, she just looks so like bratty, I feel like is the word. And like,
yeah,
I'm not sure. They might even say, Samus might have even said that about herself. She says that she was like immature or something like that, like multiple times over. And it's like, okay, like I get that we're seeing younger Samus, but like this just isn't really what I want to see from Samus in this scenario. Like, I get that she grew as a person and she's grown as a woman and as a warrior, but the scenes just don't work. I can understand that, like, she wants to work with Adam's team to find out what happened, but like, I hate that she is obeying strictly the orders of Adam. And this kind of goes into the whole authorization thing, which I don't know if you have anything you want to finish up before we go on to the authorization thing. Because all right,
I think that naturally leads into the authorization thing. Which, by the way, Samus is actually the first one who even brings it up. I think the first time the word is uttered is Samus being like, "Oh, but Adam didn't authorize me to." She says, I'm pretty sure she says, Adam didn't authorize me to go along with them and help them or whatever, or like be here, but I'm here, so I should work with them or something like that. And I'm like, Samus, come on. Like, this is not the Samus I know. She would just go in there and do it. She would just walk by them and be like, I don't even need your help. I'm just going to take them all down. And that would have been more interesting.
It's horrible. The authorization thing is absolutely horrible. And this might be, if it's not the worst thing in this game, it might be up there, because it's just, and like, it's almost a meme at this point, right? Like, Adam hasn't authorized this or whatever. But like, you know, you and I have talked about before how like creative ways to get rid of Samus's power-ups at the start of a game, or maybe she should just start with the power-ups at the start of a game. And like, she just looks so like impotent in this game, because she has all of her equipment, but she has no discernible reason not to use it other than Adam didn't say so, which for one makes him look ridiculous, because there are so many times, like when she's going through the pyrosphere and she's burning to death, and she has her Varia suit, like, authorize it. And for that matter, how does Adam even know what a Varia suit is? Because we are assuming that she got the power suit after she left Adam's employ. So it is a little bit weird that he knows all of her power-ups. But, you know, I can overlook that. But
I'm sure that he'd be able to get that information somehow.
Yeah, I can live with that. If somebody told me, like, he's got a dossier on Samus and her power-ups, like, okay. But, like, it completely takes away Samus's agency over herself, and it makes her look even more subservient. Like, there is a point in the game where Anthony is literally about to be killed. She has her grapple beam and is standing there paralyzed, waiting for Adam to authorize it, to say that it's okay to go and save your friend's life. It's insane. It's insane. It's the worst method of power-up, I feel like, in the entire Metroid series by a mile. And like, even gameplay-wise, too. Like, you know, typically in Metroid, you fight a big boss and you get a power-up, or you do something really cool, you do a complex puzzle, you get a power-up. In this game, Adam just authorizes you to use things at random times, and it feels like super, super anticlimactic. Like, I'm skipping way ahead of myself here, but like, when you get the screw attack and the space jump later in the game, you just activate it out of the blue, and it's like, oh, okay, well, like, I should have activated this at the beginning. So I think that the authorization thing is just like the absolute worst. It makes Samus look so bad, I feel like, because she is this world-renowned bounty hunter that has saved the galaxy, that has proven her worth time and time again, and like I don't think that she would do that if it doesn't make sense. Like, this is the Samus that went against the Galactic Federation in Metroid Fusion, and in here, she's literally willing to let herself burn to death or let her friend be thrown into lava because Adam hasn't authorized the use of the equipment that she needs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
ridiculous.
A lot of this game just literally doesn't make sense logically. I mean, we honestly didn't even talk. I mean, we'll get to like the eventual like setup of the whole story because it's explained towards the end of the game, but a lot of what Adam does doesn't make any sense. You would think that because a lot of this game is Adam sending Samus somewhere to investigate something, you would think that you would want her to just activate everything immediately so that way she could just access everything at any time, you know? There's one point in the game where he sends her off to search somewhere and you can't access stuff, and then he's like, oh, okay, well, now just activate this stuff and you can search more. Like, why didn't you just do that in the first time? Because you immediately activate it, and she's able to access this, like, you know, vent or whatever, and, like, the plot moves on. I'm like, wow, if you've just given her that access. Or, of course, like you said, before the volcano, he says, only search areas that you have authorization for, like, or, like, only accessible for equipment you have authorized currently. But you're able to access the volcano area despite not having the Varia suit. So you end up running through it, and it's like 5 seconds after that cutscene. So he doesn't even think like, oh, maybe she might need the Varia suit. There's even that scene towards the beginning where Samus shows up in a room while the group of soldiers, Adam's like squad, has already shown up, and there's a door there that they can't get through. So of course they're all standing around like, I wonder what we could do. Like, well, we can't blow it up because explosives could, like, you know, screw us up or like tear a hole in the wall, blah blah blah. And meanwhile, you know, they're like, oh, like, what should we do? And Anthony like hints at Samus using her missiles. And Adam's like, okay, you can authorize them. And Samus, instead of, like, you know, scoffing or being like, yeah, duh, she, like, does a cool pose. Is like, yes, I can use my missiles now. I'm like, oh, you're such a loser. You're such a loser, Samus and Other M. And then, of course, she shoots the missile at the door. And, oh, boom, problem solved. I'm like, no, duh. Like, have you played Metroid, Adam? Like, of course she can use her missiles. Like, if you know all about her power-ups, you should know when to authorize them. The fact, like, it's not even that he gives authorization, is that he has no idea when to authorize anything. Like, he's so bad at his job. It's surprising that he ever became a general or whatever he is, right? Like this is not the Adam I know either. Like, this guy also got a huge character destruction, and the authorization is very all over the place, of course. I mean, it doesn't make any sense that you'd, like, not give a bounty hunter who doesn't work for you at all, like, deauthorizing stuff. I don't know. I think the only time when Samus uses that screw attack, she says, any objections, Adam, and then just uses it. I was like, okay, like, you got it. At least she said that line. Like, I was like, all right, thank you. Like, finally she had some kind of, like, reaction, but it was so late, and it was like, she should have done this immediately. Like, this story should have been, like, it should have been in reverse. This story should have been Samus goes in and she disregards Adam's team, right? And they clearly have issues, blah, blah, blah. She doesn't need their help. But then later in the game, they need to work together for some reason because of what's happening on the ship. Instead of they're forced to start working together because Adam says so, but then Samus has to go and run around on her own anyway because everyone's dying and whatnot, right? Like, the game's backwards. Like, they had a good story set up, but they didn't write it in the right order. It's all over the place.
Yeah, I just really had a big issue with the authorization. The whole thing, I just, like, absolutely hated for every reason that you just laid out. It's just like, God, it just made her look so impotent is the word that I think I would use. And like, I could have accepted. So actually, they do say, like, Adam does say, like, you can't use your power bombs because you might destroy the station. And that's actually totally fine. Like, I'm like, okay, so that makes sense that we can't use the power bombs. And if that's the explanation, then that's totally cool. But, like, I don't know, make an explanation for everything then, or like, you can't use your Varia because of this or whatever. Or what maybe they could have done, and I'm going to jump ahead of myself here again, but, like, maybe they could have had it where, like, MB is this android that's taken over the bottle ship, and maybe she is somehow shutting down Samus's powers or something. Like, I don't know, but anything would have been better than this authorization stuff, because this was awful.
Yeah, no, that would have been at least somewhat interesting. Like, somehow you're losing your powers, to some kind of, like, mysterious, like, force or something that is unexplainable otherwise. That'd be way better than Adam just not knowing what he's doing.
Yeah.
And speaking of power bombs, I don't know if are we gonna jump to Adam's death, but I mean,
we'll get to Adam's death.
Okay, but I gotta talk about power bombs then. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to again say that I don't mind the skeleton of the story, even if, as you correctly point out, it's basically a ripoff of Metroid Fusion. So we find out that the Galactic Federation is conducting illegal bioweapons experiments, and the crew is all there. Sense. Yes, they're unraveling the conspiracy, and I love this line. Tell me if you notice this line too, because they make Samus look like such a dunce when they get into this room, because they're reading this briefing, and the computer guy, whoever that is just like, the Galactic Federation is conducting experiments here. They're illegal, and this bottle ship is run by Madeline Bergman. And Samus is just like, are they making bioweapons? Who's Madeline?
Oh my god,
it's awesome.
That dude, I'm telling you, there are a couple lines where Samus, like, there are a couple moments in the game where Samus says what I'm thinking, and I'm like, oh, thank you. She actually has a smart thought. But most of the time, she's like, that's the stupidest questions, and is like so oblivious to what's going on. It is really, really sad. There is one point though, like, yeah, so the whole, like, premise of the story, I guess, is that, and which doesn't even make any sense. So the Federation was originally trying, correct me if I'm wrong, this was my understanding when they finally explained it towards the end of the game. My understanding of the story was that after the events of Super Metroid, the Federation was like, total, those space pirates that one person destroyed? We should make a special ops force based on those losers. And the Federation goes, yeah, totally, like, this is a great idea. So while they're doing that, they get more remnants of, like, the Metroids, so they could, like, oh, we can make Metroids too, and they make Ridley, blah, blah. Then they're like, well, we need something to control these Metroids. And they're like, well, we could use this thing that was, like, the biggest threat to our existence, and we could recreate it and use it as a telepathic way to control these Metroids. Like, oh, totally good idea. And they do that. And then the AI that they create to create the Metroids, they put it into an android body, which then gets emotions and feelings. They let it into board meetings for some reason. And then it goes wild, becomes a psychic or something, and lets all the, like, crazy bioweapons they've been working on in the lab go free. So then another scientist, Madeline, sends out an SOS, which gets picked up by, I'm assuming, Federation members that aren't part of this corrupt conspiracy thing, who send Adam and his team towards the ship, or Adam himself and his team, and they go. Also Samus. And when the Federation is like, oh, this is totally going to get out, we're kind of screwed, they, I guess, either implant or they get somehow James Pierce on their side, who's clearly the deleter, to take out everything, because there's a moment in there where I'm like, why didn't the Federation just nuke this place? And Samus a second later is like, why didn't the Federation just nuke this place?
Yes.
But
I wrote that down because I was like, that makes sense.
But they explain it later because the Federation didn't want to do that because they wanted to destroy everything else except the Metroids and the AI to control them. They do explain that.
That made sense.
But the whole setup is dumb because why would the Federation even want to make a special ops force based on the space pirates who were incompetent, clearly, because Samus 1v100s them 2 or 3 times by this point, if not more, by the events of Other M. And then they also decide to recreate Mother Brain, which I know this game doesn't take into the events of Prime, like the Prime games, but like the Aurora units were clearly like based on Mother Brain. And they do it again, but let's say they're not including Prime 3. The fact that they're like, oh, our greatest nemesis, let's recreate it. And I'm like, wouldn't that be like, that's probably a bad idea? Like that could go wrong, right? Nope. Federation is so blindly evil that they'll do something that's logically dumb. And then they let Adam get involved. They let Samus just fly around in space for months at a time instead of like smartly sending her off on a mission on the other side of the galaxy while all this goes down. They just let her wander around. The game even implies that people forgot about space pirates and all the other stuff, which means she's been doing nothing for at least several decades, which doesn't make any sense because she doesn't age. But like, I like it doesn't make the setup for this game makes no sense at all. Very, very, it's very silly.
There's one detail that you left out that makes it make like a bit more sense, but I want to cover some stuff before we get to like the
wait, what was that detail though?
So when Adam is right about when Adam is about to go into Sector 0, he does say that it's only a subsect of the Galactic Federation that wanted to do these Metroid experiments. I think that's right.
Yeah, I said that. That's what I'm saying, is that like that subsect of the Federation was doing this work on the ship, and they didn't like use their abilities as part of the Federation to like send Samus on some other mission, or even Adam or something, right? Like they allowed the good part of the.
I guess I don't know. I don't know if this subsect is powerful enough.
I guess
they don't explain this, right? Like
I guess not.
But I don't know. Well, I mean, obviously they have like some high-ranking officials.
They must have some power because I mean, like they had a whole. I mean, they don't have enough power to like come up with a dummy mission to send Samus on, at least, you know. So at least they only have to deal with Adam. You know what I'm saying? Like the fact that they don't keep tabs on Samus at all, or even try to like make this a little like easier for them. Like they just had this ship floating in space that anybody could have strolled upon. Like Samus just flying around doing nothing. and just happens upon the SOS. It could have been anybody, you know? Like they're so easy for their plan to like their plan is so needlessly complicated for how easy it would have been to foil them. And it is foiled, you know?
It's too bad that we don't get a little bit of a like clearer look into like the machinations of the Galactic Federation, because like there actually is like I think that there could be some cool stuff if like you did that, because I want to jump to the deleter subplot, because I actually like, again, I think the skeleton of that story is like actually awesome. Like it's a great story to tell. Like you have this squad that is on this ship, and we know that there is some shady stuff going on, but one of these guys is a defector, and it's basically like playing Among Us, which I think you said that they mentioned in the game, right? Like
they do.
And I like that. I like that sub-story. In fact, I actually would have based the whole game around the deleter subplot. Maybe if we don't run super, super long, I'll give you my elevator pitch of how I would have made that. But like, I think that the deleter concept is like really, really cool. However, it kind of goes off the rails pretty quickly, in my opinion. So the first kink in the armor here is the boss fight against that big mechanical thing from Aliens. And this scene, it makes Samus look like doubly stupid again. It makes her look like an idiot again, because she manages to lose the deleter and MB despite there being like literally one door on either side. So like how did you lose both? I can maybe accept that MB slipped away after, like, while the fight was going on, but like, how did you lose the deleter after that? So I thought that was like super, super dumb. And then I think that I would have done more in like teasing that Adam was the deleter, because I did like that, and it would have retroactively made sense if he was giving all these like orders to Samus not to use her powers if he was the deleter. Obviously they're not going to make him the deleter because he's like the big hero. But I don't know, like it doesn't. I also thought it was weird that like he obviously knew about the bottle ship. He knew about everything. It wouldn't make sense.
No, he didn't know about the bottle ship. I thought that was. I thought that was the whole. Okay,
didn't he?
I thought the whole thing.
He knew about the Metroids. He knew about the Metroids.
He knew about the Metroids. Yeah, he knew about the Metroids, okay, and then this splinter dark sec of the Federation took his report. They co-opted it and used that to start the program the whole bioweapons program. His report on like what they found on I think it was like what they found on Samus's body or whatever. They're like, yeah, or like her suit, you know. And they're like, oh, we found a bunch of stuff that you could use this to do blah, blah, blah. But I don't recommend it because that would be crazy and nuts, and all this will happen. And then the bad guys were like, oh, we should co-op this report, and then they use his name because he wrote it, and that's why they have him down as the director. So I don't think he knew about the bottle ship. He just knew about the potential of a Metroid breeding, like a bioweapons program, and said, hey, this is my report on it. This could happen. Don't do this. But then they did it.
Okay, you know, as you explained that, that makes more sense, because I was like, if this dude knows about the bottle ship, why doesn't he just like leak its location to like the good guys in the Federation, right? But I do think that deleter angle is cool. There was a scene. Tell me if you got confused by this. When Samus is like talking about the deleter, it shows like the ship landing in this like other squad coming out. But I think it was Adam's squad. But it was a flashback. But I was just like, wait, is that a new ship that landed? Do you know what scene I'm talking about?
No, I know what you're talking about. And like at the end of it, it shows like one of the troopers like looking back at the camera like with the blank visor. It's just like a suspenseful like, oh, one of them is the traitor. Like it's just a flashback.
Yeah, it was. I thought that scene was kind of awkward though, because I just like had to think about it, and I was like, oh,
dude,
like,
this game loves flashbacks. Is there a new ship? Like,
no,
this game loves flashbacks, so you got to assume that it's some kind of flashback. There's so many times.
They couldn't even give us a nice like filter for the flashback to really let us know.
Yeah.
But so I was a really big fan of like the deleter subplot, but I'm just gonna jump right ahead here.
Well, I want to talk about the deleter thing though.
Oh yeah, no, I just want to actually, okay. Give me your 2 cents here, because I have some critiques with the way that this plot ended, or rather didn't end.
It doesn't end. I was gonna say it doesn't end. That's the then yeah. Say that if you were gonna talk about that.
All right, so this is instance number 1. Where at one of 3, by the way, there are 3 big instances in this game where like there is no payoff to what they have built up. They build and they build and they build, and there is no payoff to this.
Yeah,
there's tons of them. So they show this scene with MB and the deleter, and we're led to believe that she's dead, and then the angle is kind of done after that. They never explicitly say who the deleter is. Apparently, it was James.
It's definitely him.
But like the game never says that. It never tells you who the deleter was. There is no final boss fight with the deleter. He just dies off screen. It's like, it's so frustrating, because it's like, it happens again and again and again where they build something up and build something up, but then there's no payoff.
Yeah, so the deleter thing is really important to the plot, right? Because it's kind of like it's part of the Federation trying to cover up what's happening to the ship. But I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan of that, because like, you know, the traitor among us, I mean, that's a pretty weathered sci-fi trope, but I think it's okay. I think the problem with it is that it only works if you have multiple suspects, right? But the only people that it could potentially be are likely James Pierce, who is like kind of the evil looking one, and Adam, who is like, oh, could it be him? I honestly think it would have been better if it was Anthony, because that would have created some drama. Anthony's the only character that Samus likes full out with no issue, right? Everyone else she either has some kind of disdain for, or, you know, has neutral. Anthony being not the traitor, but like maybe he was given those orders, and then like maybe he bails, or he tells Samus ahead of, something like that. That would have created some great drama if it was Anthony, because then Samus would have had to have like, what is more important, her duty or her friendship? Like that's drama. That's great. Nope, don't do that. They make it James Pierce. So that's the problem with this part of the plot, is that it's so obviously him that it's never a mystery. Like, for example, in the scene where they get to the what is it? The biosphere testing area. Remember that big building where they end up fighting like Ridley outside of it, and it's like this big building on like a field or whatever, like just the most generic looking thing. So they go up in there, and they're in that room, and Maurice is on the computer like trying to get into like the files or whatever it is, and Adam's standing there, and James Pierce standing there, and Sam's standing there, and James Pierce is the comms guy. So obviously, when the biggest problem they have is, number one, everyone except Samus conveniently has their comms knocked out. Oh, who could potentially fix that or mess with it more? The comms guy. And then they try to get into the files, and they try to do stuff with the building, and James Pierce is the last person, other than Adam and Samus, seen with Maurice, who is the first person to die. There's also another scene, I believe it's the one where the body's being pushed into the lava, and you see his call sign on his helmet. It tells you in the game that it's him. You see his call sign on his helmet, and that's the one you see him wearing the same helmet and the same call sign earlier. There's a couple other points where it's like it's so obviously him that it would be fine if they gave those same kind of red herrings and other kind of potential like like fake outs with other characters, right? But there's never a question that it's anyone else other than like Adam potentially. Like when in the game do they ever make it seem that it's Anthony or Maurice or whoever the other guy, KG I think his name is. Like I don't even think that other guy even has dialogue other than
these
when
guys
he says
are
his name.
so generic that like it doesn't even matter. Like they could tell you that like yeah you see James's little symbol or whatever, but like it doesn't even matter. It's like who cares? We don't know this guy. We don't know anything about this guy. So
or
like,
Lyle or whatever. There's the Lyle guy, and it's like okay, like it could be this guy, but like there's really nothing hinting at it. Like so much of the game points to it being James Pierce, and then he ends up dying. So yeah, like you end up never really truly finding out who it was, but like at the end of the day, like does it even really matter? Like does it really matter who the traitor is? I guess I don't know. It was just
I mean I feel like it does. Like you've invested storyline time into that. Like you've devoted a part of the story to that, and there's no payoff. Like it's even if it's your B plot or your C plot, like there should be some payoff to it. And unfortunately, we see this again in the game. But like I would have went with Adam as the deleter actually, because I think that could have been fairly dramatic if Adam was the deleter, and maybe in the final scenes or whatever he was like, Samus, I lost my way. Do what you have to do, and I'm sorry, and something like that could have been cool.
I would agree with you if like again it was in reverse. Like Samus wasn't working with them throughout the beginning of the game, and then she warms up to them, and they have to cooperate in the middle part of the game. Right, and Samus is like, okay, I don't trust you, Adam, like, blah, blah, I had my reasons for leaving the first time, but I need to cooperate with you guys, we gotta work together, and she overcomes those feelings, but then she finds out he's the traitor, and that confirms all of her original feelings about Adam, right, and she's like, oh, I knew it,
that would be great.
I knew it, you're exactly the person I thought you were, blah, blah, and Adam's like, no, and explain, like, that makes for great drama, but if he were the traitor as it is now, Samus already has plenty of reason to hate the guy, so, like, she never warms up to him until like the very end where they need a dramatic scene and she's like crying over the guy, but like it doesn't make sense leading up to that. So like if it were that way now, I think she'd just be angry at him the whole time and like hate him, and then he's the traitor and she's like, okay, I still hate and am angry at this guy, like it wouldn't change her arc. Like Samus has no arc in this game. It would be great if she had some kind of character arc, and that would have been nice if like she was standoffish and didn't work with him. Like Samus should have been the one that was cold to Adam, not the other way around. Adam should be the adult. At least, I mean, I think Samus should have acted more badass, but if you're gonna make her not be badass, at least that's how you should have done that dynamic. And then when Samus grows as a character throughout the game, you can have that conflict later when Adam reveals his true identity or not, or whatever it is. But of course they don't pick those good, choices because the storytelling is bad. I don't know who wrote this game, and you know what? Writing a good story is not easy, but some of this stuff is really simple. I mean, it's not hard. It doesn't take. Very much.
It would have been a really effective scene. I feel like would have been to have later in the game, right before Adam goes into Sector 0, he goes and he shoots Samus. And it's kind of like, oh my god, is this guy the deleter? What would have been like really simple and effective storytelling without changing anything is to have the deleter shoot Samus, kind of play it off like that. Maybe that was Adam. He's just about to go and finish Samus off, and then bam, Adam comes and saves her bacon. Like that would have been pretty easy, I think, to do.
That would be bad, but it would be better. Because like even that's still so like cliche and obvious, but it's better than what they did.
But like in the context of like the kind of the story that they're telling, which isn't exactly A+ material, like they could have at least done that, and I feel like it would have been better than like an off-screen death. It's like that's like another instance though where like Samus is incapacitated, where someone else is driving the plot. Like so much of this game is like Samus gets saved, Samus gets incapacitated, Samus isn't involved in this, someone else does it, not her. Like how many times does Anthony save her in this game? Like at some point it's like, shouldn't Samus be doing this? This game is so bad at selling. Like
You would think that the people who wrote this story don't want you to like Samus as a character or enjoy Metroid games, because they don't sell her as a cool character or an awesome character at all. Like in the beginning, there's that scientist when they're doing that test for some reason at the beginning where like the tutorial is happening. And the scientist is like, "Oh, I'm surprised you made it out like that." I'm like, "What do you mean surprised? She blew up a whole planet on her own, like, and she's destroyed an entire species." And this guy's like, "Huh, I can't believe you made it out all in one piece." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" In Halo, when a Marine sees Master Chief, they nearly crap themselves. They're like, "Oh my God, it's like seeing Jesus," you know? Like, that's how people should react to Samus. Like, they should be like, "Oh my God, like, she's like a myth or a legend to them." Instead, she's like some weirdo. And I don't understand, like, even at the end of the game, and going back to the character arc thing, I hate that Samus has no character arc, because at the beginning of the game, so much of what Adam's talking about is how Samus is an outsider. Samus left on her own. Now she's coming back. She's not part of the group, blah, blah, blah. So you would think by the end of the game, they would accept her. And she's like, "Oh, you're one of us," or like, "Oh, you know, you might be different or you might have left, but like, we're a group or we're a team, blah, blah, blah." Nope. At the very end of the game, the very last scene, someone says, "Yes, Samus, well, you're still an outsider, so can't have you talk to these people anymore." I'm like, what the? Well, what was the point of any of this? Like, nothing changes. And it's so bad, because there's so many opportunities for Samus to grow as a character or like move the plot on her own, and instead like Anthony does it or Adam does it or a man does it. and I'm like,
you know what? I feel like that is
man.
a very that's a very prevalent issue here, and like I'm sure that they don't mean to, but like
they
make
to, dude.
Like Samus is saved by guys like multiple times in this game. She's saved by Adam. She's saved by Anthony. It's just like,
how many gratuitous ass shots are there and like chest shots are there in this game? Like plenty. So many.
There's a lot, actually. I have a comment for that, but I'll save it until after we. Well, actually, I guess we might as well just get into it now. Let's talk about kind of what leads up to that with Little Birdie and Ridley.
Oh.
So during the course of the game, of course, Samus follows this weird alien, this little, they call him Little Birdie. And you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to say it again. I don't hate the skeleton of this story. I don't mind that they have this creature that slowly metamorphizes into Ridley. It reminds me of Alien, and I think that that's cool. How like you get the chest bursts or the face huggers into like the little baby aliens, and they grow up and they can be like the full blown xenomorphs. I like that, and I don't think that that's the worst idea, even for Ridley. But like, where the game goes wrong, I feel like, is because they explicitly say like that's Ridley, like that is Ridley. Whereas what they could have said is like this is something that reminds us a lot of Ridley. It's the same species as Ridley. Is it the space pirate that we all know and love to hate? No, but like it's a clone of Ridley, and where they go wrong is just like saying like, oh hey, it's Ridley and he just evolved from this Little Birdie. So I know that you hate this, and I hate the scene that comes right after it, but I don't mind the concept of this.
Well, I will say that the one thing I don't dislike about it is that they call him Ridley, because I mean it's kind of just like saving time, like if they were to say, oh, that's the clone of Ridley every time, that's just extra words. They can just say it's Ridley. It's like when I had my roommate had a dog, and I'd be like, instead of every time just saying, oh, this is my roommate's dog, I'd just tell people it's my dog, because it's a lot easier. I don't need to explain that's not really my dog, because it doesn't really matter. I think in the context of the story of the game, everyone knows it's not really Ridley, I think, and I don't think they try to like make it seem like it is Ridley, because at the beginning of the game, Samus even says how the Ridley they know is dead, along with everything on Zebes. So I don't think they try to make it seem like it is Ridley. I think they just that's just how they're speaking. That's not what I hate about the whole Ridley thing. I think the skeleton, all of it is awful. I hate what they do to Ridley's character here. I hate that he's a Pokemon. What I liked about Ridley is he's just a monster in space. You don't know where he came from. You don't know why he does this thing, except he's there to, mess stuff up and you're going to fight him. I think that's fine. Not everything has to have this whole like mythos and long backstory, because just like it loses kind of some of the gravitas, it loses some of the mystique, and now Ridley's just like a Pokemon. You can just grow a Ridley. Like, it's no big deal. Also, I hate when characters do something that wouldn't happen in a game but only happens because myself as the player doesn't have control of my character. If I were controlling Samus, I would have blasted the thing the second I saw it. Like, when has Samus ever seen a creature on the ground with big teeth eating stuff and not been like, that seems dangerous?
Not stuff, a guy.
Yeah, like a human.
Like
Yeah,
a human.
exactly. Not even just stuff. Yeah, a corpse, right? Okay, even better. Yeah, eating a human corpse. And when in any other Metroid game, Samus would have, without even hesitating, annihilated it, right? And why wouldn't you? It's clearly the problem, right? There's even a line that Samus says when she originally comes up to little Birdie. She goes, that howling I heard earlier, is this creature the source of that howling? As little Birdie is standing there screeching at her and eating this human corpse, like, Samus, what do you think? What the thing that's making this ear-shattering noise? Do you think it's the source of the ear-shattering noise you heard earlier? It probably is. But besides that, it's a dangerous creature that in any other situation you would just immediately destroy. But for some reason, Samus has to see any baby creature now and can't kill it. So of course that means, because Samus didn't do that, Ridley gets to grow up and become the second evolution, becomes the big lizard, which they fight and looks also dumb. I mean, I don't understand the... Like, if Ridley has feathers as a younger, like, evolution, why wouldn't it have feathers as a full-grown adult? Ridley looks kind of dumb.
Velociraptors evolved into birds.
Well, no, I know, but even, like, I remember seeing some stuff where, like, even people say, like, I've seen some scientists say that, like, dinosaurs did have some kind of feathers back then, like, they weren't just kind of scaly, which makes sense, because they are related, or, you know, birds come from them. They had feathers and whatnot. But besides that, like, they don't look at all the same. The fact that Samus even lets Ridley live that long, and of course, you gotta fight Ridley later because Samus didn't kill it and let it roam free the whole time. Though I will say I love Ridley. There's two things I like about the second evolution of Ridley. I think the monster design is actually kind of cool. If it was not Ridley, I think it would have been a really cool, like... I honestly think the story would have been better if Samus thought this thing was Ridley the whole time, and then it grows up to not be Ridley, it's just something else, and then the actual Ridley showed up. Like, without any explanation. That would have been really way better. But anyway, I think it's really kind of a cool monster design. It's also funny that when Ridley, you know how it, like, jumps through walls and it does, like, the spiral through the walls? I don't know why they, like, had Ridley do that, but, like, every time he, like, dips from a room, he does, like, a spiral through a wall. They use the same sound effect that Samus uses for, like, her booster to, like, boost or jump somewhere. The exact same sound effect Ridley uses to boost through those walls, which is the exact same boost sound effect used for Banshees in Halo. If you listen to it, it's the exact same sci-fi sound effect that I noticed while I was playing the game. Anyway, I think the monster design was fine. Just don't make it Ridley, right? Like, Ridley should not have been, like, what did they do to my boy? Like, it was so bad. And we're not even getting into the actual battle yet, but just like the whole, like, making him a Pokemon, like, Samus should have just killed little Birdie, been done with it. That would have saved them so much time, and it's something that the player would have done, or a logical person would have done. But of course that's not the character we're dealing with, and it just kind of butchers his character. I think there's some cool mystique behind not really knowing where he comes from or why he is or how he's able to come back all the time. And now it's like, oh yeah, well, he's just a creature. I think it would have been better if, like, they explained it as like, oh, they used Ridley's DNA and, like, combined it with, like, some other things on the base or the lab or whatever, and created this thing, you know? Yeah. So it's like, it's kind of Ridley, but it's not. And then I would be like, all right, then that makes sense because it doesn't really look like Ridley.
You know, I think that maybe that's what I mean when I say, like, they should have explicitly said that it was a clone of Ridley. Like, just make it known that, like, this isn't like Ridley. It's something that's kind of like it that we like created. Ridley on steroids. I think that's what I mean.
No, I'm with you there. Yeah.
Okay, so if the authorization thing isn't the worst thing in this game, then this Ridley scene definitely is. This scene stuck with me for, like, years after playing this game, and I hated it, and I hated it then, and I hate it now. This is probably the lowest point of the game for me, actually, with this Ridley scene where Samus is stunned, she's frozen, she's paralyzed in fear, and she just looks like so weak and so ineffective against him. And, like, you know what? I get that they were going for, like, a PTSD angle here, but, like, if you're gonna do that, then you need to build up to that. Like, we've had a million flashbacks. Like, let's show something showing Ridley, or like really making a mark on young Samus or something like that. I think they show like a quick little scene of him, but I think they show it basically right there. And I just like, I was like, come on, like we've seen Samus fight Ridley in Metroid, and not even counting the Prime games. She's fought him twice before, and like now she's paralyzed with fear, and now she is like stuttering and stammering and about to be killed by him. And again, Anthony has to come and save her ass, and it makes her look horrible again because it's only after Ridley literally throws Anthony into like a big pile of lava that she's just like, maybe I should do something and fight this thing. And like it, oh god, it just, I was just like, okay, like I totally am on board with like, if we want to give Samus some real human emotion, some characterization, like she's dealing with trauma, she's dealing with a lot of stuff, but like I feel like there is a way to do that, and if you're gonna do that, you have to handle it with, you know, grace, right? And this is just, it's so clumsy, it's so again on the nose, but like for all the wrong reasons. It's a horrible scene. I absolutely just, I was dreading the Ridley fight going into this, and I left kind of as disappointed as I remember it being. It doesn't help that the actual fight isn't very good, by the way, but which we'll talk more about next week. But this scene, I just feel like, again, makes Samus just look like so impotent and weak. I don't know. It just, it makes her look really bad. I feel like it's another example of like, this is not the Samus that we know.
You know, I'm going to say that, like, obviously this is, like, the scene that everyone talks about in this game, and it's been beat to death. And, you know, I think it's because, I got to say, after playing the game, there's another scene that we talked about, we'll get to it later, that I thought was even worse than this. But I think that's because I forgot about it, whereas this is a scene that, like, I can't forget about. I've talked about so many times over the past decade. So I'm almost like, I feel like anything that could be said about this scene has already been said. I 100% agree with you. It looks pretty bad for Samus. I thought Ridley actually looks kind of dope here. Like, he's flying around in the background and then he shows up in the lava. Like, it looks awesome. I thought that scene looked really, like, Ridley is clearly going over in this scene. And then obviously the whole Samus stuff. I'm no expert on mental health or PTSD stuff and representing that in media, but it's not, it didn't make sense in terms of her character. But I think the thing is that there was potential for it to make sense, right? Like, Samus,
totally.
What I think should have happened was Samus should have speculated that little birdie was Ridley, or had some reason to think about Ridley through the game, and maybe throughout the game has that flashback at some point, right, where she like is stunned by seeing Ridley, like she thinks about him, like I don't know, maybe like runs into him and gets away and like has that kind of like stunned moment, but doesn't actually fight him, something like that. Then when this battle happens, that moment occurs and she overcomes it, right? And she's not frozen anymore, and she like doesn't turn into a baby. She's still Samus, and she like stands up to Ridley and doesn't need Anthony, right? That would have been a great moment because it would have been something, right? And it would have been some kind of character development for Samus. But instead, even after all of this, she still like is reduced to this like withering, blathering baby. And how many times in this game does Samus walk around in a room with her gun down, with like no preparation whatsoever, and then here in this fight, like she can't, like she like puts her arms up, like oh my god, like don't hurt me, like what is, like this game does not want Samus to look good at all for some reason, and it's like a representation of how Nintendo feels about the franchise as a whole, is how Samus is portrayed in this game. It's just very weak and not capable of really doing anything on her own. And yeah, needs Anthony here, but this had the potential to be okay, I think, if they had used that like flashback earlier in the story and then brought it back here and Samus overcomes it and like gets into Ridley's face and doesn't get bodied. Like, and then like she gets grabbed by Ridley and is like moved, like thrown around and like dragged around and like held in his grasp and all that, and like she starts losing her power suit because her power suit's held together by concentration, which is the dumbest thing, because why would you want like a power suit?
I was curious about what you would think about that.
That's so stupid. Oh, can we I'm gonna detour on that really quick because I've pretty much finished my thoughts on the Ridley thing.
Sure.
So I'm someone who like I like the mystical kind of fantasy aspects of Metroid. Like for the most part, Metroid's pretty grounded, but it has those kind of like Chozo ghosts and Phantom and like Mother Brain to an extent, especially in this game and stuff like that. Where like it kind of goes more into the realm of like the fantasy elements. It's not as like hard sci-fi. I think that's fine. It doesn't need to be hard sci-fi, but I've always felt like having Samus's like suit be kind of a physical thing. I've always preferred that. That being said, it being like an energy thing or whatever too is I think fine. Like in Metroid Prime 3, at the beginning of the game, she's sitting in her ship and she's sitting in her zero suit, and then her suit just like materializes around her. Like, okay, whatever, like it's Chozo energy, somehow that works. Fine. It doesn't look dumb at least, and it's not really a big thing. At the beginning of this game, Samus goes into this testing, like training, like tutorial thing, and does like shoots her suit out of like with like a boob beam or whatever, like out of her chest, and I'm like, what is this? And she like loses concentration when she's trying to stop Adam from going through the doors, and when Ridley's like, why would your suit be based on how well you can concentrate? Because the second you lose consciousness, your suit will go away. And then the suit's not doing anything when you're at your most vulnerable. It literally doesn't make any sense. Whoever came up with that, like, for it to be an energy thing and materialize on you is one thing, but to like be controlled by your concentration is so stupid. And this Ridley scene has that where like Samus is getting attacked. So you're telling me that the second Samus takes any physical like melee damage and loses like her train of thought, her suit is just gonna disappear and she could just get bodied immediately? Like why would that? How would that even be a design? Like that wouldn't ever make it like past like production. Like the Chozo warriors using this technology would have been like, hey, like this doesn't make any sense. Like we gotta fix this. Like this bypass right. QC somehow. I absolutely hated that about this game. And of course, like one of the first scenes is like Samus shooting it out of her chest, and like Jesus, like you can't even like this. You can't even excuse it. It's so bad. And yeah, that was a big part of that scene too. But that's all I had to say about the Ridley stuff too. Ridley looked cool though. Okay.
I want to follow up on the suit being tied to her emotional state, because like I wasn't. I
don't know. You can't tell me that you can excuse that, man.
No. Well, so hear me out here. I don't know that I like absolutely hated it on principle. I was just kind of like indifferent. I was like, okay, whatever. It's tied to her emotional state. Like, cool. To me, it felt like kind of a cheap way to get like Samus in her Zero suit, and like you could get like the booty shot. You know what I mean? Especially later in the game when you're in Sector 0. So I didn't like it on that aspect, because I was just like, all right, cool, we got Samus in her Zero suit, like, that's great, but, like, I don't know, it was lame, but it wasn't, like, awful for me. Like, there was a lot of other stuff that I just really didn't like vehemently did not like, and this wasn't one of them. I will say 2 final notes on Ridley is they really do him dirty in this game. First of all, they kind of say that as you... Exactly. So first of all, they say that little birdie was sending out this cry that's driving all the creatures on the bottle ship crazy, and they redact that later in the game, and they say like, actually no, it was MB. Ridley had nothing to do with it. And then I mentioned earlier there are 3 big points where like you should be gearing up for this big boss battle that the game is set up, and it completely just takes that away from you, and there's no payoff. And Ridley is number 2. Adam literally sacrifices his life, saying that like only you can stop Ridley, no one else can, and then he dies off screen, and it's so lame. It's so lame.
Well, he does die on screen. They show Sector 0 blowing up. I would count that.
No. Ridley dies off screen.
Yeah.
I think technically, actually, you see the shadow of the Queen Metroid coming.
The Queen Metroid,
like come on.
You see from the Queen Metroid's first-person perspective of attacking Ridley. I would consider that an on-screen death, but I 100% agree. They were setting up for Ridley versus Ridley 2, and I was like, okay, like round 2, let's go, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I didn't think that this time because I know what happens, but like that they only have it happen that way because they need a reason for Ridley to look the way he does in Fusion. Like it's so dumb. Like, they have to, like, I've argued with this with Metroid fans before. I don't think there needs to be an explanation for how Ridley appears in Fusion. I think that's part of the mystery, is that's part of the Federation being suspicious. We already know that based off of how they got the vaccine, that they were able to get DNA off of, like, you know, Samus's power suit or whatever, and use that to create the Metroid vaccine and all that. So I'm sure they could have used that to, like, recreate Ridley or keep him alive or something, or somehow keep his body alive, or even if it wasn't that, to somehow keep his body alive, right? And trying to figure that out, like the intrigue, the mystery.
They could have just cloned the guy too. Like,
whatever it is that the reason didn't necessarily need to be explained. That was part of the mystery. Like, how'd they get Ridley here? That's really suspicious. Like, I know I killed him, all that. But now it's completely explained. Oh, you beat him up, and then the Queen Metroid sucks his energy out, and then they haul his corpse out of the ship. Like, it's there's no mystique now. It's not left up to the imagination anymore. Like, so much of this game just explains stuff and holds your hand through the Metroid lore instead of kind of leaving it up to, like, a little bit of imagination. I don't think all this stuff needed to be explained. And of course, the fact that you don't get to fight Ridley a second time is so lame, because you don't get to actually kill him. And of course, I hate this, and I hate this in all media, but Samus has done this multiple times now, where Ridley is down, Samus walks up to him, looks at him, and clearly hasn't watched Zombieland. Double tap, put 2 in the noggin, make sure he can't get back up, because sure enough, Ridley gets back up and almost kills her before getting away. And that also happens in Samus Returns, where he's down and Samus doesn't kill him and Ridley comes back. And I'm pretty sure that happens another time too. But yeah, the fact that Samus doesn't just kill Ridley in that fight, just why? Why do protagonists do this? Like, just kill him. You went through all the whole fight. You take him out. You know, you're not Batman. You can kill him. It's okay, Samus. And even Batman kills people sometimes. So yeah. Ridley fight. Quite a. I feel like the Ridley fight could get its own episode, man. It's like a whole thing.
Probably.
Yeah. I honestly think the gameplay, compared to the other boss fights, relatively, I think this is one of the better boss fights in the game, actually. Obviously, for in-game, yeah, I think it is. I think overall, as a video game, like in gaming in general, it's not a great boss fight. Not horrible, it's not a great boss fight. But for relative to the other boss fights in this game, I don't think it was that bad. It was one I liked more so than others. But that's something for next week.
Yeah, well, let's table that for next week here. But I'm surprised to hear you say that. All right, so I kind of want to recap what you laid out earlier here. So Samus does eventually meet up with who she believes to be at the time Madeline Bergman, and so now we get the basics of the plot, and it's a lot of word soup here, but
the basics
it does come out. Yeah. So in addition to making bioweapons, Madeline reveals that the Galactic Federation are making Metroids and got the DNA from from Samus' suit, which also is where they got the DNA for Ridley, which apparently they did not know that they were making a Ridley. And they created an artificial intelligence called MB to telepathically control the Metroids. And you pointed it out earlier, but I want to reiterate it because I do like this, this bit of logic where, like, Samus says, like, well, if the Galactic Federation wants to cover this up, why not just blow up the bottle ship? And the explanation is pretty solid. The Galactic Federation wants the Metroids, and they're coming to get them, and so at least that makes sense.
It makes sense by their logic. It doesn't make sense in that they're trying to make Mother Brain again in the first place, but it makes sense that they would want to keep it after putting in the resources to make it in the first place.
Yes. And so there were a few unknown consequences of doing this. Apparently, a Queen Metroid was bred unknowingly, and MB had a hand in that somehow. And this is a fine enough scene. It's a little bit clumsy, but whatever. It's fine enough, I think, for what it is. The reveal, obviously, that the Galactic Federation is, interested in making Metroids would have meant more if we hadn't seen it before in Fusion.
Literally the exact same plot. It's the same thing, but they had to add the deleter subplot and whatever. It just, like I said, doesn't make any sense earlier how they're like, okay, let's recreate the space pirates. I don't know why they would want to do that. And then while they're doing that, they're like, oh yeah, we can make Metroids too. And they make Metroids. So like, we want to control these Metroids telepathically. And
So
MB says that at one point. I think either MB or Madeline says that at one point. Maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but
I think MB says
I think
that.
yeah, MB says that, and yeah, because at this point you didn't know that MB was the AI she's speaking of.
Right.
And they say she says that line as if it's like no big deal, obviously because she's talking about herself, so she wouldn't. But logically, I'm just like, why do they need them to be controlled telepathically? You know, they don't need that. They want it that way, but they don't need, like, it seemed like that's such a hard way to, like, why not just put some like computer chips in the Metroid to control them with an actual computer? You know, like, why do they have to create an, or like,
Well, the other thing too
like
is,
this
and
whole
I'm
AI
sure that
thing?
some Metroid fan out there is gonna say like, oh, they do mention this in like the manual or the manga or something, but like nowhere in Super Metroid or Metroid does it say that Mother Brain controls the Metroids telepathically in game. It doesn't it doesn't say that.
No, it doesn't say that, but they do say that that telepathic control, I think, is like established by mother, like them imprinting on the AI or something. So like they were kind of hoping it would be like an emergent kind of control almost. You know, they're like, okay, like we're gonna create Mother Brain, they're gonna imprint on Mother Brain, and then therefore Mother Brain will be able to control the Metroids. I think that's what they were. I think that's what they were kind of going for. I assume. I don't think it was like, okay, we're gonna use telepathy to control the Metroids, so we're gonna do it this way. I think it was more emergent. Like, okay, we need to control them somehow. We're gonna recreate Mother Brain. They're gonna imprint on Mother Brain. Oh, this AI can kind of like telepathically control. I don't know. I'm probably wrong. I'm probably filling in the holes for them. You know, because I don't know if all this is all said in there. I don't think they ever explain why it needs to be telepathic. I think they just say that's how they want it. Maybe because maybe. All right, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Maybe they think that the telepathy to control the Metroids is a more reliable means of communication than standard communication technology. And a good example of that is how all the comms is knocked out on the ship except for Samus's suit the whole time. So I don't know. Maybe that's why I have no idea why they had to do that. Like I said, I'm still in the boat of why would you recreate your mortal enemy and give him an opportunity to beat you again? But what do I know?
Yeah. All right, so let's go to the scene in Sector 0 now. Samus finds the secret lair where all the Metroids are, and of course we talked about Adam and the deleter earlier, where Adam shoots Samus. I think that this line is like super, like the whole scene I think is super clumsy, a little bit cheesy. First of all, I have a lot of questions that probably don't need to be asked, but I'm going to ask them anyways, and they don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But if the Galactic Federation is interested in like using Metroids as weapons or whatever, why did they order the elimination of all the Metroids on SR388? And furthermore, so Adam is the guy that like they go to and ask him like, "Hey, should we use Metroids?" And I'm thinking like, what does this guy's opinion matter? He's never seen a Metroid before in his life. Like, wouldn't they go to Samus for that? And then I'm just like, okay, well, like if we have Adam Malkovich, kind of this, not necessarily a rogue operative, but like we know that he's against using Metroids. Why would you upload this dude's consciousness to a ship that houses an illegal store of Metroids and the BSL ship in Fusion? So I feel like retroactively there's a lot of things that like don't make sense about this whole scene. But the actual scene I think is like super clumsy. It's very, very cheesy. Adam goes off to die in Sector 0 and eliminate all the Metroids, which is another like this. You know, I'm going to amend it. There's a fourth lack of payoff in this game because you never get to fight a Metroid in this game except for the Queen. But like you never actually get to fight any Metroids. Adam just does it for you and he self-destructs the thing. They're trying to draw some parallels between like the flashback scene when Samus was a young woman and Adam made the call to sacrifice his brother. And unfortunately, Samus acts just as naive as she did back then. Not a good look again, and she's back in her Zero suit, so it also just looks, I don't know. I didn't like the scene. Wasn't a great look for Samus. I feel like to be begging this guy who incapacitated her with one shot. By the way, one shot This is Samus Aran we're talking about. He incapacitated her with one shot, and she's begging and crying that he please don't do this. This is not a great scene.
That's like what in that the Resurrection of F or whatever, the Dragon Ball Super movie that came out where Goku gets like one shotted by some dude with like a laser pointer behind a rock. And it just like gets knocked out of Super Saiyan mode and gets bodied by this rando. All right, a lot to unpack there. So your first point was, why did they order the killing of all the Metroids on SR-388? Well, I think at that point they didn't know that they could use Metroids as bioweapons, really, right? Like, the only time they encountered Metroids was in the original Metroid, and then obviously during the Prime series. But like when Metroid 2 was made originally, those didn't happen yet. So I assume it was because like the Federation didn't know about their potential as bioweapons at that point. And then Samus is probably like, oh yeah, actually Metroids can turn into all these sorts of things afterward, right, in a report. And then they see what happens in Super and blah, blah. So then they're like, maybe these Metroid things could be good to kill people with, you know? So I think I'm fine with that. What was your second point? You had like 4 points there.
I don't think that any of the questions that I answered like really matter in the grand scheme of things. I don't think that they really.
I don't know why I'm trying to defend Other M here, but I want to hate it for valid reasons. Not that those are invalid reasons.
I don't think that the questions that I raised really like they don't make or break anything at the end of the day. They're just like minor little inconsistencies.
It is. I mean, the whole scenario is so dumb. Obviously, Adam dying here only happens because he's dead in fusion. Also, you know, I can accept that his AI or his consciousness gets uploaded as an AI because that's probably something that like the good part of the Federation did, you know?
Oh God, I hate that.
Like
I hate that whole gimmick.
Well, but that makes sense though. It's a huge like it's a huge, you know, it's like saying like the whole U.S. government acts as like one. You know, all the different parts are moving interdependently, and sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. You know, so like this dark sector of the Federation, and it could just be some group or a group of people or a dozen people, right? Probably don't have authority over the whole Federation, you know, but they have power and resources and connections to do certain things like, you know, secret shady research, right? But, you know, Adam dies and the whole Federation, the other part of it is probably like, oh, we gotta, you know, make him an AI, and the other dark sector probably has no like control over that. So that I'm okay with as well. And I think if they leaned into that more in a future Metroid and kind of showed that nuance instead of leaving it up to speculation, that'd be better. But that's where I'm gonna go with that. But that's obviously why Adam died here, is because fusion, he's dead. The same reason why Ridley dies the way he dies, because there needs to be an explanation for how it happens in fusion, when there doesn't need to be an explanation. They didn't need to explain how Adam dies. It was okay to leave it up to imagination, up to backstory, but nope, we need to see how Adam dies. And it doesn't make any sense, and now I'm going to talk about the thing that I've been waiting to talk about, that I talked to you about before this episode. Now,
hit it.
Now, as a writer, as a storyteller, there's something, you know, that's called setup and payoff. Now, you've talked about setup and payoff many times, but sometimes it just works out really well when you have solid, like, foreshadowing, right? When you hint at something that's going to come later, and it pays off, and it works really well. So in the beginning of the game, you commented on this a little bit. Adam tells Samus, you know, all about the authorization stuff, but he explicitly mentions how she shouldn't be using power bombs, because they go through common material, because they can destroy life and all that stuff, right? Okay, so keep those points in mind. So now later in the game, they need to destroy a sector of the ship that potentially could be destroyed remotely. What would be perfect to destroy a whole sector of the ship than a bomb, maybe, that goes off and destroys common material on all the life in its radius? A power bomb, maybe something that Samus has, would be perfect. Go into Sector 0, drop some power bombs, and then speed booster your way out of there. Detach the ship. I don't know. Like the fact that the game sets up Adam being so vehemently against power bombs, only for a scene to later happen in the game where he could then suggest them and authorize them and pay that off and be like, oh, now we can use power bombs. This is the perfect time to use them. Or reluctantly, he's like, oh, like, well, look, like we have the perfect tool for this, like, you know, blah, blah. And use power bombs, and then he doesn't have to die. Or better yet, send in Samus to do the job, because Samus is that kind of person to go into places and get the job done and get out. I mean, even with the Ian thing, right? That was his name, Adam's brother. whatever Ian is doing.
I think so.
Yeah, that whole scenario, which I even like, I had to go. I think I ended up looking this scene up later on YouTube because I kind of didn't understand what was even happening. My understanding was that he had to like fix some part that was important for part of the ship. I don't know. Somehow they're able to save all the survivors, but not him, I think. But like, why didn't they just send Samus in with Ian, have Ian fix it, and then Samus brings the both of them out? Why would you just send one person in there? Like, Samus wasn't right in that Adam should have, like, stalled for time to get him back. But Adam was wrong in that he shouldn't have just sent Ian in there by himself. Why would you do that when you have, like, a superhuman right there, Like, the fact that Samus isn't sent into Sector Zero, isn't sent into that ship, isn't sent here, isn't sent there, despite being the most qualified character, doesn't make any sense. And the fact that they set up using the power bomb for this particular situation, and then they don't do it, just is, it just makes my brain just, like, fizzle. It's like, it's such a simple setup, but like the payoff for it would have been perfect. Like, it's so easy. And it would have been satisfying. It would have been like, oh yes, you can go in there and just tear it up, Sam. Just go in there and just mess it up. Use those power bombs. Use them all. And finally, you're like, yes, like I'm gonna use the power. Nope. This lame character, this poorly written character, Adam, rest his soul, gets the heroic death moment that he doesn't deserve, that he didn't earn through the story, and goes out in a blaze of glory while the protagonist, Samus, is standing there once again watching the plot move on without her. It's just comedy.
Crying and like a dunce.
But then after that, she's like, all right, my last words were, let's, what was it? It's like, let's finish this, or like, oh, leave the rest to me. I'm like, wow, this is not appropriate. Like, Adam just died. Like, like you don't need to do an anime pose and have a cut, like a one-liner there, Samus. Yeah, that whole thing, a bunch of silly comedic nonsense. The fact that they just fumbled the ball so like crazily, like to the extent that they fumbled the ball, it's practically in another field, another game, is amazing to me.
You know what is another. It's another thumbs down for this scene too. Is like, if you're gonna do this, right? Like, at least show like Adam's final moments. Like, throw in a cutscene, which the cutscenes look really good. I'm sure this would have been a nice looking cutscene. Throw in a cutscene of like him fighting the Metroids, and like we can see his last moments, and he finally fights past the swarms of Metroids, and like makes it to that self-destruct button, and like. You know what I mean? Like, spend like 60 seconds just like showing, if you're going to give him this heroic send-off, like, give him the heroic send-off. Like, we see it detach, Sector Zero detach, and then blow up. And like, I don't know, like, if you absolutely had to do this, then at least show us his final moments, I feel like, right?
But they can't show him that. They can't show us that because it doesn't make any sense, because Adam isn't capable of going in there and 1v50ing Metroids to get to the self-destruct button. Like, he's not able to do that. He's not like a soldier, and he has like a stun gun. Like, the only reason he was able to stun that Metroid or whatever, or stun Samus, is because Samus had her back turned to him. Like, he realistically, if we were to see that scene, he would have ran in there, froze one Metroid, and then he would have got swarmed and died. But because we didn't see it, the plot is allowed to move forward. and we get to pull away and see it happen. But realistically, there's no way he could have actually made it happen, which is why we didn't see it.
So I wonder if I don't think that the game actually explicitly says that like the Metroids have broken out and they're free roaming. Do they?
I can't remember.
Because if they were still contained, I could accept that. Adam goes in there and just like destroys the Metroids, and because they're contained in their pods, like that's how he's able to accomplish that. I could accept that.
I thought
I could be wrong.
I thought it was that everything was loose, but they were able to contain them to Sector Zero. But I guess they weren't, because Samus went to Sector Zero to meet Madeline. I mean, I guess that's fair. I guess if they weren't technically loose, they were just kind of in their tubes or whatever, their cages, then I guess he would have been able to. But then, yeah, just show that, just have him do it. But then at the
Right.
same time, they're like, and I think even they kind of knew the line of how much to indulge in this character, because that would have been a whole thing. I mean, you're essentially giving even more of a heroic death to a character like that. Like, I don't know. I guess they didn't want to go that far with it, but I'm sure they didn't have that kind of awareness, because if they had, they wouldn't have even been in that position in the first place.
Yep. So there goes Adam.
There he
good
goes.
riddance, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of Adam. I'm not a fan of him in this game. I'm not a fan of him in Fusion.
I like him in Fusion. I think he just is ruined here.
Oh, man. You know what? You said it earlier. I want to echo it. I do like the scene where Samus is just like, any objections, Adam? I think that comes after.
It's when she
that
gets
happens.
the screw attack, or no, she's gonna like,
She
oh,
gets a space jump in the screw attack.
yeah, she needs to cross this big like gap, and she's like, oh, I can't like grapple hook or whatever, and she's like,
Right.
activates the screw attack, and she says to herself like, any objections, Adam? Like, Adam can't hear her or anything, and she's like, haha.
It's a nice line, and it finally gives Samus a little bit of agency in this story.
Yeah, finally.
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 Like,
But it's such a
let's,
sad moment though, because it's like, wow, good for you. You thought for yourself,
Oh.
Amazing, well done. You want a cookie? Like it's so like sad.
that's pretty. It's pretty sad, but I mean that's basically
That's
you
basically
nailed
this
it
game
right
is
there,
just
right? Like,
sad.
well, we're in the home stretch here. This is a long episode, but we're gonna wrap it up and keep going right until we get to the end,
Keep
because
it going.
there's a lot that's
We haven't
still
even
yet
gotten to
come.
the best part of the game.
So Samus fights the Queen Metroid, which is kind of a cool fight, but and then she meets the real Madeline Bergman, who is the person who sent out the distress signal, and finds out that who she thinks has been Madeline Bergman is actually the android MB. And as you correctly point out, MB has developed a soul and become self-aware as an AI. And you know what? I mean, you built an AI modeled after Mother Brain. It's not from the Book of Good Ideas, but you know what? Okay, whatever. I can accept that explanation. But man, this
scene.
the scene the scene where Madeline and MB and Samus finally meet up. Oh my god.
I can't believe this is allowed to be in Metroid.
This was pretty rough.
Like, I cannot believe that this is in a Metroid game. This. I think this is worse than the Ridley scene, man. I really think it is.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go back to right at the top of the show when I said that by and large, I don't think that this game is like, the story wasn't so bad that it was good for me. This scene is the exception, because this was like, this was so ridiculous and like so ludicrous. It was awesome. It was kind of hilarious, because like you have like, first of all, it is like so melodramatic. You're seeing flashbacks of MB like freaking out
And like a
and developing,
boardroom meeting, she's like they allow this like AI in and like a teenage girl or like young woman's android body or whatever it is, and she's like arguing with these, like she's essentially a Roomba, like arguing with them in a board meeting, right? Like she's just like an AI. Like she doesn't need to be there, right? Like, and yet like she's at the board meeting, like being all angry and yeah, like she's developing a soul. Like, what is happening right now? Like this is the worst of fan fiction. Isn't even it might be at this like Marina Trench level of writing here. Like, wow.
It's pretty bonkers. And like and you know, we talked about how this game just like, they really like, they hammer it down with a chisel about like the themes of motherhood and whatnot, and like Madeline feels like connected to MB because that's her baby. She names MB Melissa, which is just like the most lame thing ever. I mean, that's so lame that she gave her like a name. Come on.
So they could have the same initials. And so they can have the same
Oh
initials, so
god.
that way the mystery can happen. Because this mystery is
Yes.
the mystery of the game is not a mystery because it's mysterious. Is because the game is intentionally not giving you information. Therefore, you don't know what's happening. That's not a mystery. That's just confusing.
So this is the fourth scene, I think, in this game where they set you up for something and there is no payoff, because you see MB going absolutely berserk in the flashbacks. She's this big badass artificial intelligence that's like commandeered the whole bottle ship and is taking it towards Galactic Federation space. She's obviously fairly powerful. She's a formidable threat. I mean, she's the reincarnation of Mother Brain, for God's sakes. And Madeline is trying to get through to her, but she can't do it. MB is deemed humanity not worthy of surviving. I'm fine with that. But then instead,
You're fine
of
with that?
getting an epic boss fight. Well, you know what?
You're fine with
you know
with that.
whatever. I'm fine with that. Okay. At this point, I'm like, whatever. I'm okay with this.
Yeah, just get it over with.
But then, instead of getting like this awesome boss fight for the fourth time, they take it away from you, and there's no payoff, and you don't fight MB. All you do is you have that schmoz finish at the end with like she summons all of the bugs and stuff like that, and you have to shoot her with your missile, and like that's it. That's the end of the game. Like that's the last thing you do in Metroid Other M. And it's like, what?
This whole scene is I don't know what drugs the writers were on during this scene when they were writing it, but I want them, because this scene goes so off the rails. Like, you wouldn't believe that this is in a Metroid game. You wouldn't believe that this is in a Metroid game. Like, MB becomes like a literal like psycho mantis. Like, she's floating in the air. There's like purple like cloud energy swirling around the room. Like, dude, I swear to you, when I replayed this game over the weekend yesterday, and I got to this scene, my brain blocked this scene out from my memory. That's how bad it was. Because when I rewatched this, I was so stunned. I was so blown away. I was laughing because I was like, I cannot believe I forgot about this. This is the worst thing. I think this is the worst thing that's ever happened in a Metroid game. It's not the Ridley scene. It's not the Adam death scene. It's not like, it's none of that. It's this scene. This is the worst moment, I think, in Metroid, because you literally have this like anime villain who has the writing of like a 12-year-old who is like, she literally says, I will bring judgment on the humans. You must understand the weight of your crime. Like, it is the worst writing. And she has like these close-up like anime like on her eyes shots to make her look all bad. And then, yeah, of course, Mother Brain gets frozen, and Anthony saves. I think Anthony like makes a big save here before she unfreezes. I think she
Oh yeah,
she gets frozen by
let's get
Anthony,
to that part.
unfreezes. Then she starts like electricity attacking everything. There's like dark smoke. I was like, bro, what is happening? And then she like sends like some like message through all the wires to like, yeah, like you said, like signal the creatures to the room. Then Madeline shoots Mother Brain or MB whatever and freezes her again. Samus has not done anything. I think the only thing Samus has done is fought off the creatures she summoned, right? She hasn't froze MB or anything. And then at the end, MB gets frozen a second time, and all of a sudden there's like a dozen soldiers on the apparent second floor of this room, and they just light her up. They just blast her away. Finally, someone just blasts this android away, shatters her to
This scene was
smithereens.
awesome.
I mean, I was laughing so hard watching this. Like,
Well,
this
hold on.
scene.
And Madeline she's the one who gets the final shot on MB, right?
No.
She's the one who like pulls the trigger.
She, from what I remember, is she freezes MB at the end, and then Samus is, I think, going to shoot her or something, and doesn't, because like Madeline gets in the way, or I don't remember exactly, but I remember that the soldiers show up and they blow her away, like her frozen body. They just absolutely decimate her. And that just comes out of nowhere. They just all of a sudden are there.
This ending sequence is bonkers. I didn't even mention the team that just shows up here. But so we have I'm gonna walk you through this. So we have some random team showing up in the middle of the Madeline MB Samus confrontation. They freeze MB, but they don't destroy her, which they obviously should because she is obviously a threat. They have Samus and Madeline dead to rights. They do not destroy either of them, even though they should probably at least try to do that because they know that Samus is going to expose this whole conspiracy. This Colonel walks out. He's right from Metal Gear Solid 2. I swear I saw this guy in Metal Gear Solid 3. He walks out. He's obviously this corrupt official. We don't know who he is. We have no idea who he is.
Never seen this character.
He's not
before.
the man in Fusion. Yeah, we have no idea. No idea who this guy is.
He probably is.
Out.
He probably is though. Like that's probably what they were insinuating.
He probably is. But you would have no way of knowing that. Like, imagine playing this if you hadn't played Fusion 2, by the way. You'd have just no idea. But,
Yeah.
like, so this is, like, so ridiculous. Because, like, first of all, why wouldn't you destroy Madeline, or MB, rather, as soon as you froze her? Second of all, Samus... So the unit in this Colonel guy tells Samus, like, you're coming with me, Samus. You're an outsider. Your job is done. We're taking Samus. And it's obvious that they're going to cover this whole thing up because they're taking, like, the only witness in Madeline Bergman here. So, like, second of all, why doesn't Samus just, like, completely waste all these guys? Or at least incapacitate them if we don't want to see her killing humans. Third of all, why don't these Marines at least attempt to take out Samus, since, like, she's obviously going to blow the lid on this whole conspiracy? And fourth of all, how did Anthony sneak into this guy's unit? Like, he just shows up and he's like, hey, princess. And it's like, oh, like, on one hand, like, yeah, all right, cool. I like Anthony. I'm glad he survived. But, like, what are you doing in this other unit? You know what I mean? Like, this is just, it's so bonkers. This James Bond villain Colonel at the end is so, like, ridiculous. What else? I was having a good time when this was going on because, like, at this point in the game, it's like, whatever. Like, let's have some fun and let's kind of laugh at it. At this point, I think I could say that, like, now we have entered, like, Mortal Kombat Annihilation or the Room territory, where, like, this is so asinine that it's awesome.
So I found exactly my notes here on exactly what happened, my reactions to it. So exactly what happens here is you're fighting in first person mode, right? Mother or MB is like commanding them, and so Samus aims at her. Madeline says no and is like, no, don't shoot her. So then Madeline freezes her. But then after she's frozen, that's when the squad shows up on the second floor and they blast her away. But then they pick up her, like, her body's on the ground. So, like, she's not, like, blown to pieces, but they do, the soldiers do blast her away. And then, yeah, like, I'm assuming it's because, like, Samus shows up and, like, she doesn't know if this guy's a good Federation or a bad Federation guy. And, like, this guy, even if he is a bad Federation guy, he probably has so much authority that, like, she probably doesn't want to, like, attack these guys, you know? And, of course, this Samus in this game has never tried to 1v any group at all, even though she clearly could. So I'm not surprised that she doesn't take these guys on. I do think it's hilarious that they just show up and just blast her away. I'm assuming that they're just like, okay, like, this is getting out of hand. They've probably been, like, monitoring the situation. They just show up to try to clean it up as best they can. And then I guess, from my understanding, at least from what I saw, is that Anthony wasn't in their squad. He just shows up afterward. Like, because they come in from the second floor, but he walks in from a doorway on the first floor. So I'm assuming he just walks in and he just, like, tries to look the part. I don't think he, like, blended in with the squad on their way in. I think he just walks in, you know, and that's why they're like, oh, who are you? This whole scene is just, I mean, bonkers. It is insane. Like, the melodrama of, like, Madeline trying to save, like, MB and Samus, like, fighting off these bugs, and then, yeah, like, the Metal Gear Solid general showing up and is like, and then, yeah, and this, I mentioned this earlier, and then this guy, like, what should have happened here is this guy is obviously sus, and Samus, like, he comes in here, he clearly brings us the squad to clean up the mess and escort everybody out. What should have happened is the general should have come to Samus and should have, like, congratulated her and made her feel like part of the team and not like an outsider. And Samus would take those words to heart, but at the same time remember who they're coming from, so she'd feel conflicted, right? She'd finally not feel like an outsider anymore, but look what it cost her, right? Like, she doesn't feel like an outsider to someone who's super suspicious, right? Like, does she want to be working with these people, etc., you know? Like, that would be the character development you have here, where Samus is finally not an outsider, but now she sees the consequences of that. Now she's not an outsider to a group that maybe she does want to be an outsider to, you know? That's, like...
I think that would have been
that's
better
storytelling.
If she accepted being an outsider.
Well, okay, even if she okay, that's fine too. That's another way to go about it. If she, like, accepted being an outsider, but here she's Here,
like,
here she's
either way,
here she still clearly doesn't want to be an outsider, and she is still called one. So nothing changed, you know. She didn't get over it, and or they didn't make her not an outsider anymore. Like, so what ends up happening is she's still called outsider. She hasn't changed as a character. They could have gone other ways about it and made actual, like some drama from it again, but they don't do that. And then, yeah, Anthony shows up. I think they even show how Anthony survives. I'm just like, okay. Like, there's no way he could have survived that. I think he ends up, like, freezing one of the lava monsters.
He freezes one of the enemies.
Which I'm like, okay, guy, like, whatever, fine. You're a superhero too? Whatever. To be fair, I'll take it. I like Anthony. I think Anthony is one of the only characters in this game that is, like, tolerable. I mean, he's clearly there for Samus to talk to, because they can't do flashbacks every time, even though they clearly want to. But I guess he's alive, so he could show up in another game. That's cool. But yeah, this whole ending is such a mess, man. I mean, the MB, like, becoming Psycho Mantis and, like, a crazy, like, Mewtwo character. I don't know, like, whatever insane stuff was happening with her. The ending is just, and no one's changed by the end. Samus is still the same character.
I do think that it's weird that the Colonel allows Samus and Madeline and Anthony to just leave too, because like obviously they're gonna blow the lid on this whole thing, or so we think. That doesn't happen in Fusion yet, but I mean, like, there's no way that they should just be allowing them to leave, right? Like, there's no way.
I would like to think that it's more of like a maybe like an ego thing from. I mean, this guy comes in all smug and whatnot. This general, he probably is like, oh, we can deal with Samus. Like, we can deal with them later. It doesn't matter if they leave, or they're not going to say anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, one of those things where they're not worried about it because, like, oh, we can get away with it. Like, look how we almost got away with it. We're going to clean it up and we're going to do it again, and they do. You know. But again, it's those. You're right. They should have done something, but the Federation doesn't act like they're logical at all throughout this whole story. The fact that they do this experimentation on a ship that anyone can come across, that they allow Adam and Samus to even come across it at all, that part of the Federation allowed this, like, testing to happen or didn't know about it, all this stuff, all this nonsense, and then, like, the dichotomy of, like, good Federation, bad Federation, which is clearly hinted at, but, like, they don't really explicitly go into it. A lot of this stuff is, like, holes we fill, or, like, you know, the nuance that the games really don't go into that I wish they would. And obviously we glean a little more of that from Fusion as well. Fusion's, I think, a little more explicit, but this game borrows so much from Fusion that it's essentially just the same thing happening again, right? Which makes that's one thing that sucks about this game, is that then if you were to play it chronologically, the actions of the Federation make even less sense in Fusion after the events of Other M, which is dumb because the events of Fusion make sense on their own had Other M not happened. So it not only screws with continuity of the games that happened beforehand or ignores them, it screws with the ones that happen later too, which is only one, but...
Well, it totally does, because at the beginning of Fusion, the Galactic Federation goes out of their way to save Samus's life when she's about to die.
Well, I don't think they would let her die. Like, I think they see value in her. Even if she would know this stuff, I think they still see value in her as, like, a bounty hunter, you know? I don't think they would let her die.
I mean, I don't know. If Samus is against you, then that's a pretty big threat.
Is it? Because in this game, she does nothing. In the context of this game, she's not a threat at all. So it makes sense, you know?
If we got Super Metroid or Metroid Prime Samus against you, you're in trouble. Different person. But yeah, maybe you're not wrong. I mean, you know what? I I think the story is a mess. The writing is bad. The acting is bad. The direction is bad. I do think that there were flashes of a good story and a good idea in here. I do think that. I think that the skeleton of the story was decent, but a lot of it was a retread of Metroid Fusion. A lot of it just came down to the directing choices and the way that they told the story. Because I think that, and you mentioned it earlier, I'd be really interested to watch that translation video of Other M, because apparently it was a lot better.
Yeah.
In the way that it was originally.
It apparently
written.
does improve it a lot. Yeah.
This is just it's pretty clumsy, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I don't entirely agree. I mean, I still think that the story has a lot of logical issues, structural issues like that. No retranslation will fix. I think that the retranslation might fix Samus's reactions. She probably won't be literally explaining what we see as much, stuff like that. But the logic of events and decision making that characters make won't change, and I think that is still really horrendous. Aside from the dialogue, which is also bad, I definitely think even the structure of the story has a lot of issues. But we can't gloss over this. By the way, there's that other cutscene at the end of the game where Samus is flying in the ship and she's monologuing again. The end cutscene just before the credits roll. We got to quickly talk about that, because that scene is almost as bewildering as the scene before it, because it's like a whole eulogy over MB, who is the bad guy of the game. Samus is reflecting over MB and is Melissa wasn't insane. A consciousness simply bloomed within her, and then the humans said that she was insane. I'm like, what are... excuse me, did you not see...
Which, you know what? Which is fine if you build her up as a sympathetic villain.
Right, yeah. That could have made sense if they wrote the story that way, yes, but they didn't. She was a bad character through and through. It was this game all of a sudden at the end of the game wants to be humans are the problem, and that's the theme now, because it got over the mother and daughter thing for a little bit, which is just so... She was an android. She was never a young woman growing up, right? They try to insinuate she was a young woman just blossoming, and then the humans led her astray. She was an AI and an android that made of metal,
modeled after Mother Brain.
Yeah, and then she flies through a star cloud in MB's face. It looks like her. What is happening? Are we retconning the story that was just told before the game is over? But before the story is over, you're retconning the events of the sequence that just happened, and you're trying to make me sympathize with the bad guy that you just killed? No, I'm sorry. Can't have that. Her monologue at the end where Samus is simping over Mother Brain, I was just bro, what are they doing? But then they do overcome that, because we get that cool Samus in the military outfit with the long hair. A really solid look.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, I thought that was a cool scene.
That's a cool look. And then she messes around with Anthony a little bit.
She was flirting with Anthony.
Yeah, I was I want more of this. No, don't end the game.
Yeah,
start the game here. Screw what happens. Everything previous. Start the game here. I would have loved that game. Instead, we got what we got. I'm sorry, just before we moved on, I had to talk about that last scene, because when I thought it couldn't get any worse...
I'm glad you brought it up.
When I thought it couldn't get any worse, Samus flew through a star cloud, a space dust cloud of her arch nemesis's human android face. And I'm like, bro, what? How is this allowed? This game should be illegal. It should not be allowed. It should be a banned game. It really should. It is. It's an assault on the brain cells. The story is an assault on the brain cells.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, I think I just put the controller down and went to the bathroom or something while this was happening. I don't know. All right, so I got a few quick notes here that I just want to go over, just real fast bullet point notes about some characters and stuff like that. You can jump in with any thoughts and stuff like that too. I you know what? I do like Anthony a lot, actually. I think he is a very likable character, which is saying something in this game, because almost everybody is unlikable. You know what? We talked about how the setup for it sucked, but him fighting Ridley is pretty cool, all things considered. It makes him look like a badass, and
yeah,
I think that Anthony is definitely the bright spot of this game.
Yeah, because they put him over so much. So many times in this game, I'm like, wow, if they just put over Samus as much as they do Anthony, her character wouldn't be as bad. But like they give all these cool moments to Anthony and Adam for some reason, and not Samus, which is just
Samus is putting over the new talent.
Yeah, she is. She's putting over the new talent and gets nothing out of it. She just gets buried the whole game. The game is just constantly burying her for some reason.
Yeah. So a quick note about Adam that I had that I didn't know when to bring this up during the actual events of the game, so I'll just bring it up now. I don't like Adam. We all know that. I think that Samus over-explains the objections lady thing, but like the explanation for this is like absolutely awful. Samus is just like, Adam calls me lady because he's joking in his joking manner, and I'm like, what about Adam tells us that he's a jokester at all? Like, what about Adam shows us that he even has a sense of humor, like anywhere at all? I hated that, and I hated that Anthony called her princess too, for that matter.
You know,
didn't like it.
I mean, I think that kind of stuff is very dumb, and like having pet names for women, I don't know, not something I would do.
It's dumb.
Regardless, I think the worst part about that is like the same thing with like the explaining how like the thumbs up symbol is something that's been used for the Galactic Federation. Like that's something that everybody does forever. You didn't come up with the thumbs up symbol. I think the thing that this game does one of the worst is that it like over explains the simplest concepts. Like it would be like your friend like explaining to you what like an inside joke is. Like, oh well, you know, like everyone knows what one is. Like they take the simplest concepts and over explain them to make it sound like there's some deep thing. Like Samus spends 5 minutes explaining how a thumbs down means she's being rebellious. Like, yeah, we get that. Like, it's not very complex, but the game wants to seem like it's so deep because it doesn't actually have anything to say. It just wants to sound deep and sound like it has something to say, and it doesn't. I mean, think about it, really. This game is, actually, it's funny. I went back and I looked at the dialogue from the game. What I found was wrong, but I found a transcript of all the dialogue in the game, and Samus actually only says the baby, I think, like only half a dozen times in the game. It's actually not that many.
Oh God, it feels like a ton.
But it feels like it all the time. But it actually isn't. In contrast, I think in Fusion, she only mentions the baby Metroid once. It's the beginning of the game, and it's in relation to what the vaccine was made out of. And even then, she calls it the infant Metroid, never the baby Metroid, blah, blah. She never, like, attributes, like, a familial thing to it. And in Super, and in Samus Returns, and in Fusion, the baby Metroid is just like, oh, this thing imprinted on me. Well, now I have this, like, little thing following me around. But in Other M, it's like she obsesses over the baby Metroid. Like, it's literally her baby when it's not. And, like, the game has nothing to actually say about, like, mother and daughter relationships or, like, imprinting or any of that stuff. It just constantly hits us over the head with the baby. And, like, oh, Samus is obsessed with the baby. But why? Why is she obsessed with it? Why does she, like, what is the reason for that? And they never actually go into it because the writers didn't actually, and the producers and all them, the directors, had nothing to actually say about these themes. That's why towards the end of the game, it just all of a sudden becomes humans are evil because they don't have actually anything to say. So they had to come up with something that just is, to make it sound like it was even deeper than it was, which is, I think, even just an insult to our intelligence that we wouldn't be able to see through that because this game thinks it's so smart when it really isn't.
Yeah. Again, I don't really disagree with what you just laid out. Two other quick notes, then we'll wrap it up here. You know what? I'm gonna give some credit again where I feel like it's due. Initially, I was asking like, why would they make like an Android version of MB and not just have it as a computer program, I guess? And the game does offer up an explanation where they say like, they modeled it after how the baby Metroid attached itself to Samus, so they thought that by having a physical MB that they could replicate the same thing.
I thought that was fine.
I appreciated that explanation.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree. I thought that was. I mean, again, they didn't need to make her like like I don't know. It's obviously like not the only reason they did that in the game, but I thought that was fine. Like that made sense. Like yeah, the Metroids can't imprint on a computer program. They need to imprint on some kind of natural orgasm or organism-looking thing. Wow, organism-looking thing that they can imprint on. It's 2 hours.
Simple things, but I like it. You know, it goes. It's the small things, right?
It's the
That
small
they add up.
things,
So,
yeah.
last note that I want to leave on is, as much as I'm sure that we will never see Nintendo make mention of Metroid Other M really again in the Metroid series, because I think they know, they know that this wasn't a hit, and they know that fans just didn't like it. But I'm going to throw this out there. If we had Anthony or even Madeline Bergman show back up in another game, I would be fine with that.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's a controversial opinion. I would agree with that. I think Anthony would come back, or should come back. I think he'd be fine. I think it makes sense that he would come back. Why wouldn't he? Right? Like, he's still working with the Federation, friend of Samus. I think it would make sense for Samus Steven to go to him for help potentially. Madeline's not a character I really ever think about much, but yeah, I think it would make sense to have her come back. Maybe not reference her what happened in Other M, but just to have her come back in some form. I think I'd be down for that. I don't think it would be the worst thing.
It's not something that I think is ever going to happen.
No, I don't think
I really don't think we're ever going to see these guys again. Maybe Anthony, but I think that the reception... And Nintendo knows how bad the reception was, so I think that they're probably just going to stay retired.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but if they came back, I'd be down for that too. I don't know that I'm quite on the level of you, or I just don't want to acknowledge that this game happened. You know what? It's pretty bad. There's a lot of scenes that are really bad, but I don't know. It's maybe I'll the game itself, and maybe this is more of a conversation for next week. But some of the gameplay redeems itself a little bit in my eyes, but this is I don't know, just a missed opportunity, frustrating. I don't mind. We've talked about this before. I don't mind the more cinematic approach for telling stories, but this obviously, it just was a swing and a miss, I think, is the only way to put it. And I hope that they rebound from this and they stick to, how Metroid tells stories in its most effective way, in its most best way, which is, in my opinion, through the environment, and letting the environment be the story, and letting you discover and peel back the layers yourself, rather than just bashing it over your head. So
yeah, and final words for me here. I agree and disagree. I think Metroid does a really good job of you finding it out yourself and kind of picking out the story and discovering it on your own through the player. It does a really good job of that, and I love that about the Prime games and the 2D Metroid games that aren't Other M. And I agree, I love that. But at the same time, I am a sucker for good cutscenes and good storytelling through cutscenes, and I think had the Other M cutscenes and story been good and the content good, I mean, it would have been amazing to see actual good Metroid content in those graphics, shot like that. It looked awesome. Some of the shots look really good and really amazing, but just what it is made up of is not good, So I'm with you, but I'm not with you. I want to see more of a cinematic approach, because I think that's part of good storytelling. Is having that kind of approach in a way, and especially with more modern games and high definition games. We haven't had a Metroid game that could really take advantage of a proper cinematic storytelling in a modern way, in forever. And I think this would be a great opportunity to do so, especially with Metroid Prime. So we'll see. I hope that it doesn't dissuade them from being cinematic with Metroid, because they
trying again.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think that should dissuade them. Also, I want to quickly mention the main menu theme, that small, just minimal piano track that plays in the title page and then the main menu screens in this game. I forgot how much I love that track, and really kind of sets up the game a little bit as being a little melancholy. And I wish the music in this game is actually really good, and there are a bunch of tracks in there that I thought were pretty solid, but that track really brought me back, because it brought me back to my hype for this game. Because I remember we were talking in a conversation. I think I thought I couldn't remember where I heard this music, because I remember listening to it before the game came out, and I was like, oh, was it on a YouTube rip or something? It played on the official Metroid Other M like website that they had at the time, and it would play as like the main page in the background. And I remember as a kid sitting on that web page and refreshing it to hear that track because I loved it so much. And I remember anticipating this game a lot. Like I really was looking forward to Other M. I thought the initial trailer, except like the first person stuff looked kind of bad, and I knew that, but like I thought the trailer looked hype. I loved like the promotional stuff. That website with the track sounded awesome. Like I was really looking forward to this game. So I think that's probably why I always like, not hate, because hate's a strong word, but disliked it, because it really let me down more so than most other games I can think of in my life. And so it was nice to come back and revisit the game and not have like that vitriol feel for it as much, and be able to just look at it in a new lens and without as much on the line,
Right.
and just kind of, laugh at it and play it for what it is and try to make the most of it, but still obviously hone in on what sucks about it. But when I replayed the game and I heard that track again, I was like, wow, that really takes me back, and just kind of like that anticipation before everything went downhill. So that was just one thing.
I'm glad that you got to like re-experience it in a different way.
Yeah, dude, like I said, I really was dreading playing this game because I thought it was going to be a hugely negative experience. And honestly, there were some points in playing this game that were very dreadful. I mean, we summarized the story here, but this story happens over several hours, and like there's some points where nothing's happening, and like you're just running through areas or playing the game, and like nothing is happening to advance the plot, or you're not learning anything, or the story is advancing very minimally through the gameplay. So like I think we're kind of retelling it in a little way that makes it sound maybe more funny or entertaining than it is. But I did laugh at it and was entertained by the game more than I thought I would be, because I do have an appreciation for bad movies and TV and stuff like that. So
Right.
that this kind of was up my alley, so to speak, in a way I didn't expect. Because last time I played the game, I didn't have that appreciation for bad movies and TV like I do now. So, yeah, I'm glad we were able to revisit this. I take back what I said. I wish I wasn't such a stubborn mule about it, but, it is what it is. It is a Metroid game that does exist, so we did have to talk about it. And I'll have all the opportunity to trash on it more next week, so it is what it is.
And I think going back to what I said at the very beginning of the show, like I think that we were fair to Other M. I don't think that we beat it up unnecessarily. We beat it up where it deserved to be beat up, and there are many areas where it does deserve to be beat up. Make no mistake. But I think that we were fair, and I think that we're not out here saying that this is the worst thing that's ever existed. So yeah. So yeah, there we go. Well, this has been our longest show ever by a long shot. Really? So holy moly. So thank you everyone for listening to this marathon episode.
For sure. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm glad we spent this much time to talk about it. And yeah, I was nicer to this game than I thought I would be. I found myself defending it more than I thought. But maybe just because
Who are you?
Maybe just because it put a smile on my face more than I thought it would. It really made me laugh at how bad it was. So, I'll give it that. It brought out a side of me I didn't expect. Maybe I don't hate Other M as much as I thought I did. Who knows? But yeah, let it rip, man. We got to wrap this up.
Yeah, we're not done with Other M either. We'll talk about the gameplay specifically next week, and I'm looking forward to that too, because I do think that there is a decent game hidden in here somewhere. But that is going to do it for us for this week. Thank you guys for checking out this really, really, really long show. I hope that it was worth it. We've been building up to this for a while. Make sure that you come back next week for part 2. And until then, we want you to check us out over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spiteri316, at DaxCity_, and of course, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Pods, Podbean, wherever, like and subscribe. That's it. That's all. We are gonna get out of here, and we will see you guys next week. Until then, take care.
Samus, do you copy? Samus! Samus, use your plasma beam! What's your